Does feel like it wasn't too long ago. I definitely remember the kind of stressors of navigating, undergrad and high school and undergrad and med school and residency and all these things, and just looking for guidance and mentorship. And so I really leaned on a lot of my mentors along the way to just kind of navigate and figure out like, how do I move from step to step? Like, how do I figure out, what type of experiences I should be doing? Is this the right thing? Is this the right thing? So happy to pay it forward in that way and, lean into this experience and tell you all a little bit more about me. So before I get into the specifics and the nitty gritty of like where I trained and like what did all these steps look like, I always like to give people just a little bit of a view of who I am just as an individual, as a human being. I think it's really important to remember, even when you go into medicine, when you spend all these years training to become a doctor, like you bring yourself to each and every patient encounter you're going to have. And so starting kind of with you as a human first is super important. To that end, I'm going to walk you guys through, again, just a lot of the experiences that shape me, my family who shapes me, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of medicine. So, looking at this picture here, I start off with this. Oh, I see someone's not muted. I'll just pause for a moment. Perfect. I always start off with this picture here just to give you guys the core of just who I am and who created me. So in the middle of the screen is my mom and dad. So you can see here, my dad on the right here, mom on the left, and then I am that very hangry looking baby. My face looks like that quite often if I don't eat in enough time. So this is representative. I know I'm smiling right now, but I can feel like this sometimes. But yeah, my mom and dad, high school sweethearts, small town Louisiana. What you can't tell from this picture and what you can't tell from just like seeing me sitting here in the Zoom room is we're all giants. So my dad is 6'9", my mom's 6'2", and I'm also 6'2". And so big family. We were a big athlete family. My dad actually played college basketball at University of Notre Dame, then got drafted in the 80s to play with the Bulls. And so my dad played for 15 years of professional basketball, 13 years in the NBA. And so that really shaped a lot of my early childhood. I include this little picture of me in a box with my older brother, Ronaldo, to give you guys an example of just like what childhood looked like. It was a lot of moving around from place to place as he played with different teams. We grew up around a lot of like big NBA legends, as you can see on the right. If anyone here is an old like 80s, 90s sports fan, we grew up kind of around like Michael Jordan, Kobe, like a lot of really big names in sport. And so having this mindset of excellence in kind of whatever you do was always something that was really core to just my identity and what I was exposed to early. Um, so as I alluded to earlier, basketball was a big thing in my life. I ended up being born and raised in Los Angeles when my dad was playing for the Lakers. And both my brothers, actually all three of us played basketball growing up. My two older brothers, the top right you can see there is Zach, and the one on the bottom is Ronaldo. They both played college basketball. Ronaldo actually went on to play professionally as well. But I kind of shifted gears a little bit towards volleyball. So I played basketball mostly growing up, shifted over to volleyball later on, but volleyball was kind of, in sports in general, were sort of like secondary to me. I was somebody who, from the time I was like 6 or 7 years old, was very, very dead set on becoming a doctor. I loved science growing up. I was very fortunate in that my best friend in elementary school, her father was our school science teacher. And so every time I went over to her house, he would like create these little science experiments for us to take us into the backyard and show us different like animal tracks and kind of teach us about animals and plants and nature, who take us to museums. So he really brought science alive for me. And so activated that interest very early. And then my mom, she was always really big on just this idea of service and helping other people. She grew up like in poverty and didn't really have much, kind of grew up in a poor neighborhood in Louisiana. But she said she never felt that, like she never felt lack growing up because she felt like the community always made sure everyone had what they needed. They always helped each other. And so that's always her message that she had for me was, making sure whatever you do in life, make sure you're doing something to help out your fellow neighbor, make sure you're doing something to help out those around you. I think that's a message that a lot of us can sort of relate to. So for me, those two ideas of like, I love science, I love learning, as well as, oh, I want to make sure I'm doing something that's helping people. That really just made medicine make the most sense. And I still feel like that to that day. And I'll get into that a little bit more later. But, each and every day, I feel like all the things I spent years and years studying comes to life in front of me. I studied, anatomy. I studied the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, and all these things. And each and every day when I see patients, I'm able to apply, like I see these things come to life in front of me, and I'm able to apply what I've learned directly to help people suffering every day. So it's pretty cool. Medicine's really unique, and I probably don't have to convince any of you guys in the room that science and medicine are really cool, but I really, really love what I do. So because of that, I was very much wanting to look for a place to go to college where I could balance the two. Sports was really important to me, but also academics was very important too. And so I initially was thinking about going to MIT, or Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I had applied early admission and gotten in. But at the end of the day, shifted gears a bit to go to Princeton because Princeton is Division One athletic program, meaning I could play volleyball at the highest level while also kind of going to a top-notch institution for academics. MIT was Division Three for sports, and so that ended up kind of swaying my decision over to Princeton. I loved it. I loved the experience, the balance of kind of academics and athletics. I struggled as a Californian. You can see this picture on the bottom right is literally me and my teammates trying to push our bus out of a snowbank after one of our volleyball games. This is after we'd like played Harvard and it was maybe 10 p.m. at night. And yeah, our bus got stuck trying to get out of a gas station and we're like sweaty and gross after a game and trying to like push it out and took it like 4 a.m. until we could get back home. So Jersey and going to the East Coast was a whole experience, but in general, it was really cool to be able to experience life as a student athlete in that way. But I think it's always really important, again, when I'm talking about and thinking through, pre-med and like what it means to be pre-med, to talk about like what are the other things that I did outside of athletics and academics. So, of course, the volleyball thing was the biggest part. One thing that I was engaged in that I absolutely loved and gave me a great community at Princeton was the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students, or MAPS. So MAPS has a chapter all around the United States in every college. It is essentially like a subset of the National Medical Association. The NMA was started years and years and years ago because the American Medical Association, again, in the United States, didn't allow Black doctors into it. And so the National Medical Association grew out of that as a necessity, again, to help provide some community and sense of mentorship and guidance for Black physicians. Then from there, students, medical students who were Black recognized, hey, like we need to, find some community as well. Like our needs are a little bit different from the physician's needs. And so they started the Student National Medical Association, which again is an amazing organization. There's a chapter at every kind of medical school in the US, and they, provide a lot of support for students. And the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students is again like the pre-med version of that organization. So having community was really important in college because it was hard. I was taking the required biology courses, organic chemistry, physics, all of those. And so being able to have a community of folks who, look like me, had been through a similar journey was really, really important, as well as the ability to have like some leadership experience on my resume. So I was the just a kind of member of this association my freshman year and was able to serve as the vice president, second, third, and fourth year. So having that longitudinal leadership experience was really important along the way and for, my applications. The other thing that I joined my freshman year was our Student Health Advisory Board. This was actually a really cool organization. I really encourage all of you to get involved when you're in college or if you're in college already in some form of a student health board. One, because it gives you an opportunity to sort of think through health issues that apply to college students. And two, it gives you, again, that leadership experience where you're, directly doing something around medicine. So to give you a little bit of a vision of what this organization did, we would do a lot of various events on campus around issues that were relevant to college students. So whether that be, sleep hygiene and kind of advising on healthy sleep patterns, like having different tables around the student center where we were providing information and doing these different weeks on various health related topics. We were talking about, drinking and alcohol use and like how that affects the body. We did different events on, sexual health and things of that nature. But the most memorable experience that I had with the Student Health Advisory Board was back in I believe this was 2013 or 2014. There was actually an outbreak of meningitis B on campus. If you guys Google like meningitis B, Princeton, like you'll see a bunch of news articles about it. That was a while ago now. But there was unfortunately an outbreak and like a deadly outbreak that, meningitis some students brought meningitis onto campus who had been traveling. And there was while people receive a vaccine against a strain of meningitis, most people in the United States were not immunized against the specific strain. And so everyone was susceptible to it. And so as we all unfortunately lived it with the COVID pandemic. When you have a new kind of pathogen, a new bug that hits a group of people that don't have any immunity against it, it can spread quickly and it can cause like really devastating illness. And so national and like state governing like health bodies actually really needed us and leaned upon us to take action as the student health advisory board to try to like mobilize students in ways to protect people against the spread of illness. So we were doing a lot of public health campaigns of just like, hey, don't share drinks, try not to do X, Y, and Z to try to prevent the spread of this illness. We did a big vaccination campaign. The FDA basically rapidly approved a use of a vaccine that was used in another country to be brought to the United States and to be kind of used here. And so we had to do a big education campaign around it, just getting people comfortable with this vaccine, encouraging people to come out and get vaccinated and organizing those vaccine efforts. So that was a really remarkable experience. And again, helped me make a tangible impact even before I was involved in medicine or in medical school. So again, would really, really recommend you guys think about ways to either get involved if there's something like this on your campus or to create something like this. It's a great way to really help encourage your students and make that impact that you want to make down the line even earlier. Another thing that I did when I was at Princeton, really mostly my freshman year, but was like kind of loosely involved with it throughout all years, was working with the Foundation for the International Medical Relief of Children. This is always one that I also encourage people write down because they're a global organization and really anyone could work with them. I'm obviously biased because I worked with them for a while and they're a really wonderful organization. But they essentially run clinics all over the world, largely in areas where access to medical care is quite limited, to be able to provide that resource for largely for children and families in those communities. And so Princeton's had a chapter of this that I joined, went to my freshman year, like intro to different activities fair, and just joined this one. And what was really cool about this is I got to, throughout the course of the year, participate in a bunch of different fundraising efforts and help organize things. But we also basically spent the year raising money and raising donations, gathering toiletries, pharmaceuticals, things like that, to physically go to one of their clinic sites at the end of the year. And so I went to Costa Rica. This is now in the spring of 2012. And actually got to spend a week shadowing doctors who worked in that clinic. We brought down a ton of donations. We actually did a toiletry drive and had people bring in toiletries and medications to be able to like go to one of the big parties that were happening on campus. And so then we were able to take like 4 checked bags, like full of all these donations down to the clinic and help kind of stock their pharmacy that they had down there. And yeah, it was an amazing experience where I could like shadow directly. I could participate in the medical care of these kids and get to explore a new country, which was really cool. So those were 4 things that I was super involved with. Other things that I did, I helped create the Student Health Service Council to try to get more student athletes involved in community service, which was really great. I also worked because college is not cheap. And there's, even if you have some form of scholarship or whatnot, there's always expenses that pop up. And so I had a variety of different jobs, largely was looking for jobs where I could like do homework and also work. And so usually that turns into being like front desk working at a library. I worked at our gym, our school's gym, kind of checking people's cards in and like giving them basketballs and gym equipment and things like that. And also working as a meal checker. So similarly, like making sure people were swiping in to get their meals. So various odds and ends and things like that. And then my fun fact that I usually give to people is that I also was a Zumba instructor. So this was like totally out of the box. I took a Zumba class the sophomore, my summer after my sophomore year and like fell in love. And so was like, you know what? I love doing this so much. I want to learn how to teach it and like make some money from doing this. So I taught Zumba for a couple of years when I was in college, which was pretty fun. Now shifting gears and talking a little bit more about, how did this translate into, medicine and me getting into the field of sports medicine. So the first day of my last year at Princeton, my senior year, we all the athletes will do certain like conditioning tests to make sure they're working out during the season, during the off season. So, we're in the weight room doing squatting and bench pressing, lifting, we're doing our vertical jump testing, sprint testing, all of that. So I was doing, all of these tests, doing well, excited for my first practice and to be on the court. And we go to do our shuttle testing, which is basically where you kind of have to sprint and change direction quickly, back and forth and back and forth. And on the very last shuttle, I go to plant my foot and change direction. And I, out of nowhere, hear and feel the loudest pop in my body that I have ever felt in my life. It was awful. And I remember falling down to the ground and reaching back to touch my ankle. And I feel like where my Achilles tendon, that kind of rope in the back of your ankle above your heel is, there was just nothing there. And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, I just tore my Achilles. And it is a very unusual injury, especially for a young woman. This is more commonly known as like the weekend warrior injury. So for, the 40, 50-year-old man who sits down at his desk all day, doesn't really work out, and then he goes and tries to play basketball on the weekend with his friends and tries to do some quick explosive motion. And his Achilles tendon is just not ready for that and can rupture randomly. That's more of the common injury pattern that we see. But for me, it was a freak accident. It was a freak injury. I didn't really have any issues with my Achilles or my calf or my ankles before. So it was unusual and really devastating because the recovery time from an Achilles tendon rupture is about 9 months, if not a year. And so in that instant, I knew not only was that season gone, that was my last season in college. So like my volleyball career was over. And so that was, again, devastating. Um, the benefit of it, as I look back at this picture and this very fake smile, because I was like not happy at all, were the things that I learned about my body, both physically and mentally. I actually had my surgery at the hospital for special surgery, which is where I was employed to work my first job as a physician 10 years later, which was pretty cool. But it taught me a lot about the musculoskeletal system, about physical therapy, rehabilitation. It taught me a lot about just the patient experience of having experienced an injury yourself and the impact that can have and just the devastating impact that it can have on your mental health and your physical health. Taught me how much you can shift and change. I went from being the most physically fit I'd ever been in my life to not even being able to put weight on my foot for 2 months. So it was a really difficult experience, but a really necessary experience to give me that insight into what is it like to suffer, a major trauma to your body. And so this was really beneficial from that standpoint. And again, from the mental health standpoint, which I'll speak more about later, but kind of understanding about what is the mental toll that a physical toll can take on the body. All right. So once my Achilles was back together, and I finished out the school year at Princeton, I actually went straight from undergrad to medical school. So I was an undergrad at Princeton. I graduated in 2015 and then went straight through to medical school at the University of California in San Francisco, which is a really, really incredible experience. I was super lucky in that UCSF, one, I was in California, so the weather was better. I keep talking about the weather because I just had to spend like 20 minutes digging my car out of the snow here in New York City. And yeah. Anyway, I'm not a cold weather person, so I ran back to California to try to get back in the sun and get closer to my family. All my family was still in Los Angeles, and I had a wonderful time between just the atmosphere. People in San Francisco are also very social justice oriented. And they're very focused on not just the ways in which we can heal someone's physical body, but how do we also help address the harms that society does to people? Like, how can we recognize the ways in which lack of access to food, exposure to police violence, to gun violence, how do all those things have an impact on people's health and well-being? And like, what can we do as physicians to advocate for social changes that can happen in our world to make our patients healthier, both inside and outside of the hospital? So again, UCSF was a place where I really learned a lot about that. I didn't really have much of an awareness of those topics before going to UCSF. And so it was really, really important for me to be in this institution and to train here. And I also met a really awesome group of people. So a group of people who are all like mean mugging the camera in this picture over here are all like actually really genuinely fun people. We were just like being silly in this photo. But this is a really amazing group. We all started medical school together back in 2015 at UCSF. And we're all now attending physicians all over the country. So a couple folks, Justin and I were pediatric residents together. He's a pediatrician now in the Bay Area. Afomia, whose wedding I was just in Italy, which was so cool, is now an emergency medicine doctor in California as well. Kristen's an oncologist in Houston. Angel is a general surgeon in Columbia here in New York City. And then, yeah, I won't kind of go through everyone here, but we've got OB-GYNs here. We've got family medicine doctors, surgeons, emergency medicine doctors. So it was a really fun community, again, just of folks that I was able to connect with at UCSF. So awesome experiences there. I did something that I did not know that many people can do. But when I was at UCSF, I actually took a year off in between my third and my fourth year of medical school and got a master's in public health. So again, this is not something I knew a lot about when I was a undergraduate student, when I was a high school student. I just assumed once you start medical school, like you're locked in, you do your med school, and then you go on to residency and whatnot. But I actually really strongly recommend doing this additional year if it is possible for you when you get into medical school for a lot of different reasons. One, the pace of medical school can be very fast, especially as you get to the tail end of medical school. You'll go through all of your clinical rotations, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you're done with rotations, apply to residency, go on, like keep moving, keep moving. And so taking this gap between third and fourth year gave me some time to really sit down and reflect on like, what do I actually love doing? What do I want to do within medicine? Like, what specialty do I want to do? And why do I want to do that? And it also gave me a really cool opportunity to dive deeper into thinking about, as I was alluding to earlier, not just individual health of one person, but thinking more about what can I do as a human being to make the world healthier. And just being in a space where like I was surrounded by people who were really interested in that was awesome. So I will kind of speak more about both of those lenses with regards to me thinking through the idea of like, what do I really want to do? I had gone into medical school thinking I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. Between dealing with my own orthopedic surgery, the Achilles rupture that I mentioned earlier, as well as, just growing up around sports and seeing a lot of musculoskeletal injuries, I was like, yeah, orthopedics made sense. But as I went through medical school, I was doing a lot of, shadowing physicians, joining like an orthopedic surgery interest group, all these things. I was starting to feel more and more like maybe this isn't quite it for me. Like maybe, I don't know, like I just didn't quite feel right. But I had committed to it for so long. I was like, I mean, this is just who I am. I kind of started to wrap my identity around being an orthopedic surgeon. And so I remember I did my 30 rotations and I saved my surgery rotation for last. For context, if folks don't know kind of the structure of rotations, you essentially you essentially spend 1 to 2 months in each major rotation in each specialty in medicine. So you can kind of get a flavor and education and what all of these different specialties are, and to help you decide like what specialty you may want to go into one day. So you'll spend, a month or two as like I tell people it's like putting on a hat of a different doctor every other month, which is actually really fun. So it's like, okay, for 1 month, I'm a neurologist. For another month, I'm a psychiatrist. For the next month, I'm an obstetrician. Now I'm a surgeon. I'm now an internal medicine doctor. So you get to really try out all of these different forms of medicine to help you decide what you want to apply into ultimately. So I had planned to wait until the end of all of my rotations to do my surgery rotation because I was like, okay, I'll be very knowledgeable at this point in time. It'll be the end of my third year. I will like know how to function on these rotations and I'll be very smart and like ready for my boards and all of that. And so I go through all my rotations. I really love my pediatrics rotation, but I was like, oh, kids are fun. Like this is just, I'm just enjoying it because it's fun and not really, I didn't really think much more of it. Then I get to my surgery rotation and I did not enjoy a single day of it. It was just not for me. Like the lifestyle, the hours. I remember having some of my classmates would come to me all excited who were on the same rotation with me. And they would say, oh my gosh, the resident on asked me if I wanted to scrub in on another appendectomy and I'm going to stay late to do that. And I'm so excited. I love this. And I remember looking at them and I was like, this isn't what I want to do because I could tell in that moment, like how excited, like, and how genuinely passionate they were about the field. And I just didn't feel that same passion. And so I was in that moment, I was like, okay, like I need to slow down and do some actual reflecting and figure out like what is it I actually want to do as opposed to like holding on to this dream that I had like 10, 15 years ago. And so again, this MPH year gave me that opportunity to do that reflection and figure out like what do I actually want to do rather than like what do my mentors want me to do? What did Tiana 10 years ago want me to do? But like what did I actually enjoy? And what I realized was, again, reflecting on that pediatric experience, I loved working with children. I loved the joy and the energy and the optimism that they brought. I loved the idea of trying to establish healthy patterns rather than trying to fix something that was broken many, many years down the line. And so working with kids just felt very natural for me. And so during my MPH year, I remember at the beginning, they told us that we were going to have to do a field work project or a practicum experience. So we could apply the topics that we were learning in our MPH program to the world around us. And so I remember talking to my mom about this. I was talking to her about how I love pediatrics and, felt very passionately about it. My mom, for context, worked in education. And so she was basically one of the administrators at a school district in Los Angeles. And she was like, yeah, there are many health issues that we see in the school system that we aren't quite equipped to manage, that we want to do more about. And specifically, the example she brought up was mental health. She said, there's lots of kids who come in. We were specifically, the school district where she worked was in inner city Los Angeles. So dealing with a lot of things like community violence, poverty, things of that nature. And so she, was like, there are so many mental health issues that we see that are arising out of trauma, that are arising out of, emotional dysregulation. Like, we want to do more about it, but like, we're teachers, we're administrators, like, we don't really know, we don't really have the tools to address this. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting, because on the pediatric side, we see these kids for like 15 minutes once a year during a well child check. Like, we don't get enough time to really dive deep into those topics. We are so worried about, okay, what vaccines have they had? Like, what's their weight? What's their height? Do they have a skin issue? Like, how about their asthma? Like, we got to pack so many things into the visit that even if we do identify a mental health issue, we don't really have the time or the bandwidth to address it. And so I thought to myself, how incredible would it be to combine these two worlds, to help give the skills that we have on how to address mental health within the medical space, and help try to equip these school systems where these kids are 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year. How about we give them the tools and help bolster up and make the school environment a more healing environment for these kids? And so that's actually what I wrapped my entire MPH year around. I created a school-based mental health program called Embrace the Mind, which of the mission statement, this was again 7 years ago, so I'm like a little fuzzy on the mission statement, but essentially we were trying to reduce stigma associated with mental illness, um, like provide education around mental health, and like equip students, teachers, and families with tools to build mental wellness. That used to roll off the tongue a lot better before. But anyway, our whole goal was essentially to bring these strategies and these techniques around mental health, and just provide more awareness about how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental health issues, and just turn mental health education into just a normal part of school education. And so I got to spend a year really like building the frameworks for this program, which is still up and running and has affected thousands of students in inner city Los Angeles, California. So that was work that I was really proud of. And again, came out of me taking a step back and taking time in between that third and fourth year of medical school. So again, if anyone has an opportunity to do a master's in public health at some point in their journey, would strongly recommend it, because it was a really, really incredible and really impactful year. And it's work that continues to impact me on a daily basis. All right, so shifting gears, I only want to talk for another maybe 10-ish minutes, and then we'll do question and answer. But shifting gears, the next step in my journey, I went from third year of medical school. I did my MPH and I graduated from there in 2019, finished my fourth year of medical school in 2020, and then started residency in June of 20, or July of 2020, which was during the COVID pandemic, which was challenging, which, folks have questions about that, happy to share. But in short, I will say I did a 3 year residency program in general pediatrics, which was incredible. We similarly do rotations, just like there are rotations in medical school. But those are basically rotations in all of the different areas of children's health. And so we'll spend some time working in our like newborn neonatal intensive care unit. And so what you're looking at on the left here is me practicing intubation on a baby. So you see how tiny that model is. Babies are sometimes born, and the biggest challenge that a baby faces as soon as they're born is transitioning to life. So taking that first breath, and starting to cry. And so some babies, for whatever reason, if they're born prematurely, if the mom has been on certain medications, if they like inhaled a lot of kind of the fluids, as they're being born, they can come out not breathing. And so we learn a lot of skills around neonatal resuscitation to help get those babies breathing. So that was a lot of the quite literally life-saving work that I did in pediatrics, which was very cool. So we'll spend some time in those units. We'll spend times in cancer units, pediatric cancer units, which were incredibly challenging units, but incredibly impactful times that I had, taking care of young kids with cancer, many of which did really well. A lot of childhood cancers are very survivable. But I also, again, had to, sit with patients and families as their children became sick and passed away. And so that was something that, again, like lays on my heart even to this day. We spend times working with pediatric allergy, immunology, working on pediatric cardiology units, taking care of kids who are born with holes in their heart, or heart valves that are not connected correctly. We work in different units who are. I also see. I'm going to take a quick pause. I just saw like there's a bunch of stuff popping up in the chat. I will answer questions at the end, so please feel free to continue putting in things in the chat, but I'll kind of circle back. But yeah, so we work in all these different pediatric subspecialties, pediatric gastroenterology, pediatric psychiatry. And again, all of this is to give us a really well-rounded education and just how to take care of children, whether it is a totally healthy child just coming in to see you for a checkup, or if it's a critically ill child in an intensive care unit on a ventilator, receiving a bunch of different antibiotics, and we're working up and trying to figure out what's going on with them. So pediatric residency is a mix of a lot of different things. But generally, as you can see on the right here, very fun, kind, friendly, warm, and open people. If you think about your pediatrician growing up, hopefully you liked them. But when you think about that person, and hopefully they were again very friendly and warm, I was able to work with 30 different people like that in my residency training, as we were all residents together, and really had a wonderful time. So it was a wonderful training program. And then shifting gears. So as I was wrapping up the end of my residency, I loved my residency, but I also felt like there was something missing. And I spent years like not really fully understanding like what that was and what was missing. And then it finally kind of hit me in an aha moment where I was like, oh, right, sports, like that thing that I spent 20 plus years of my life wrapped up around, and my family kind of spent all wrapped up around. That was a huge part of who I am and my identity. And like that wasn't part of my life anymore. Like I had completely abandoned that to be involved in medicine. And so I kind of, again, kind of spent some time reflecting, was looking at the different subspecialties within pediatrics, and I stumbled upon this field of primary care sports medicine. And that is a field that I quite literally, until my second year of residency, did not know existed. And so, what the field of primary care sports medicine is essentially non surgical orthopedic care, so bone and joint care for people of all ages, as well as primary care for athletes, recognizing that athletes put a great amount of demand on their bodies, and the demand on their heart and their lungs, their skin, like their gastrointestinal system is different than, what the average person is putting. And so recognizing, how do we care for an endurance athlete who's running 30 miles in a day? How do we recognize different injury patterns and treat them for folks? How do we treat like a concussion, a brain injury in an athlete? Those are all the type of topics that where primary care sports medicine comes into play. Because orthopedic medicine or orthopedic surgery, they're the people that you want. If something falls apart, a bone breaks, a tendon snaps, you need them to stitch things back together. But they're surgeons, so they're not necessarily getting that like medical training. And so that's kind of how me and my surgical colleagues work together. And so I spent 1 year down at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, doing this primary care sports medicine residency or fellowship, which was incredible. So during that year, during the weeks, like Monday through Fridays, I would typically work one-on-one with one of our attending physicians in a primary care clinic. And so we were evaluating people with acute and chronic musculoskeletal aches and pains from head to toe. We were also doing a lot of injection procedures. So on the bottom right, you can see me practicing an injection guided by an ultrasound machine. And you can see on the screen, I'm injecting or putting a needle into this little block of tissue. And you can see this little white stripe here is that needle. And I'm kind of targeting this little like pebble essentially that was put inside of this block. So I could get that hand-eye coordination and how to do that. We do a lot of different injections for people with chronic joint pains, whether it's anti-inflammatory medicine, different gel medications to lubricate joints for people, for example, with arthritis who have had a lot of wear and tear of protective cartilage inside of the joint and they're having a lot of pain. We also do regenerative medicine, so we'll inject things to try to stimulate healing within a joint or around a tendon. So we'd spend a lot of time doing those injections and also just evaluating people in clinic. Then we also did a lot of sports coverage. And so we worked with UCLA Health provides medical coverage for the Lakers, the Dodgers, the Sparks, the Chargers. And so we would go to these games and be there in case of medical emergency, as well as taking care of chronic medical needs that either the players have or the staff have. So that was a really cool thing that we got to do. This is Dr. Marissa Vasquez, the head team doctor for the Dodgers. So we worked with her directly as well as the head team doctors for a lot of these teams. We also, as I mentioned earlier, worked and covered endurance events. So this was me at a triathlon in Oceanside in California. And so we would be there, of course, if somebody is doing a triathlon, they're going to be exercising at their peak intensity for 9 hours. There's lots of potential medical issues, cardiac issues that can arise. So we're there to take care of those. We also got to spend 2 weeks working at a ski clinic. And so they put us up in a cabin up in North Lake Tahoe, which was so fun. And we got to work at a clinic. Basically, if anyone falls or gets tangled up with somebody else on the slopes and get injured, they would kind of put them in a toboggan and bring them down to the end of the slope to us, where we would kind of stitch them back together, stabilize their joint, do whatever needs to do to kind of take care of their acute injury. So all things that were very, very fun to do and help prepare me for my current position, which is now at the hospital for special surgery, where again, 10 years after I got injured and was a patient there, now I get to work each and every day in that same facility, which is very cool. So my job is a combination of a couple of different things. So I, of course, work in clinic. I love this picture with one of my patients. This is used with permission with her mom. But she was as an example of one of the kids that I treat. So kids with, broken bones, overuse injuries from sport, ankle sprains, chronic knee issues, shoulder issues, things of that nature. I see and take care of those kiddos all day. I do technically see people of all ages though. So I tell people I see like age 3 to 93. So I have a lot of patients who are as young as this patient here, all the way up through patients who are like in their 90s who have really significant arthritis, but for medical issues or other reasons they can't get a surgery. I can, like I said, do a lot of different types of injections and procedures to get them feeling better. I also do coverage outside. And so this is me providing medical coverage at a sporting event, at a national basketball tournament, where, gosh, within a couple minutes of me getting there, a referee had a seizure on the court. And so I had to resuscitate and manage that. So, yeah, those are the kind of emergencies and things that can arise there. I work at various endurance events, as I mentioned earlier. I do a lot of teaching and conferences, things of that nature, as well as being one of the team doctors for St. John's University. HSS is one of the official hospitals for St. John's Athletics. I'm the head team doctor for a volleyball team there, which again is very fun as a past college volleyball player. So if anyone is interested in actually seeing like what a day in the life looks like, on either of my Instagram, the Call Me Dr. T is like my more kind of personal Instagram. The Dr. Woolridge is my sort of HSS Instagram account. You're welcome to hop over onto there. I put together a day in the life reel where you can see a little bit more in depth what my workspace looks like and what the day in the life is. Though I specifically pulled a day in the life that was like kind of long. So not every single day looks like this day. I think I'd been working until like 9 p.m. on that day. That is not every single day. Typically I'm working Monday through Friday, like 8 to 5. And then, a weekend game here or there. But it is a very fun opportunity to see what I do. All right, so I will close out in the next couple of minutes by just giving you an understanding of like what is sports medicine, kind of who is involved, who do I work with. I already alluded to, I work with a lot of orthopedic surgeons, and so I am constantly sending patients back and forth. We are sending patients back and forth to each other, where, if I have a patient, they're like, oh, I fell down and I hurt my arm. I get an x-ray and I see the bones are like really shifted far apart from each other. And I'm like, this can't just go in a cast. This has to be like surgically pinned into place. I will send that patient to one of my orthopedic colleagues and vice versa. If they evaluate somebody who has chronic knee pain and they're like, oh, I twisted my knee, it really hurts, I think I need surgery, and we get an MRI and they ultimately might have sprained in a ligament or a tendon or something of that nature where nothing's torn, they don't need an operation, but they still need somebody to like manage their care, maybe give them an injection for pain relief, get them into physical therapy, they'll send them over my way. Other people who I work with very closely on a daily basis, athletic trainers. So those are the health professionals that work directly with athletic teams. And so I even just this morning was texting with one of the athletic trainers for the St. John's women's basketball team because we have an athlete there who's dealing with a concussion. And so we're talking about how do we advance her care for this concussion and get her better and back on the court. With regards to our physical therapists, those are essentially like the athletic trainers just for all people. And so I work on a floor above a physical therapy location. And again, communicate constantly with our physical therapists about, hey, so and so had this, ankle sprain. This week, we can advance their activities so they can do this. All right, next month, now we can get them to running and jumping. And all right, now let's look at their biomechanics and make sure that they're balanced with their strength on one side or the other before we get them back to sport. So there's a lot of cool ways in which we collaborate and work together. And then lastly, again, a big plug to our sports psychologists. There are a couple of different ways to get involved with the mental health of athletes. You can either go through like a general psychology program and go get some additional certification in working with sports. Or there are people who are psychiatrists, so people who are medical doctors who do a residency in psychiatry, and then they get, some additional training in sports, and then they can, prescribe medications and they can work with other medical doctors in that way. And there's also people who are certified performance and mental coaches. So they're not necessarily medically trained, but they learn a lot about how to work with performance anxiety and performance pressures and teach athletes different mental tools to deal with that. So lots of different ways. And again, more providers that are typically on that, those medical teams. Um, so I wanted to give you guys a bit of a case. Usually when I'm in person, I'll kind of do this more interactively, but I'll just talk through this in the next minute or two. But this is something that I see quite commonly in clinic. So 16-year-old female soccer athlete who comes in to see me. They're had a non-contact injury, meaning they were running, quickly trying to change directions to see, to get to the ball, felt a pop in the knee, had some pain and swelling. Basically was like, okay, give her some ace bandage. But even a couple days later, she's feeling a lot of instability on the leg. And so again, I'll often ask people, what do they think happened? But for the sake of time, I'll kind of talk through whenever I hear about somebody who twisted their knee and they have pain, swelling, instability, I worry a lot about the ligaments inside of the knee. So ligaments are essentially ropes that hold one bone to another one. And so if you've heard about, the medial collateral ligament, the anterior cruciate ligament, the MCL, the ACL, all of those are different ligaments. Even ligaments kind of on the sides of our fingers, if you kind of bend your finger side to side, and you see like it doesn't really move that much side to side, that's because there are ligaments or ropes that hold these bones together. And so when I hear about a twisting injury, I worry about those ligaments there. This is just a super complicated diagram to show you guys how many different ligaments there are inside of the knee, as well as potential other structures that can get injured, right? There's a meniscus, which are these C-shaped discs of cartilage that sit inside the knee that are essentially shock absorbers in the knee to protect the knee from any twisting injury. There's bones, there's muscles, all types of things. And so if somebody comes to me with knee pain, these are all the structures I have to think about to try to figure out, all right, what was probably damaged and what do we need to do about it to get you feeling better? So in this case, if we get an MRI on this patient, this is essentially what you would see. So this is a side view of an MRI. If you were to look at somebody from the side with MRI vision, this is what you would see. And so this bone up here is the femur or the thigh bone. This bone down here is the tibia or the shin bone. And this is the patella or the kneecap. And so in this view, you should see a black stripe that is running from the back of the femur to the front of the tibia. And that is completely gone. You can see like a little fiber, this little thing that's like dangling off there. And so that is the ACL or the anterior cruciate ligament that has been injured or torn. And they're showing you in a couple of different views what that looks like, as well as swelling. This is a pocket of fluid or inflammation inside of the knee joint. And then there's kind of bony bruising as a result of these bones kind of shifting and tearing against each other. And so the MRI is a helpful tool that we will use to make these kinds of diagnoses. All right, so I'm going to skip this just for the sake of time, and also this usually is just a video I get people to get their attention and to make them cringe, but it essentially shows the mechanism of how these ACL injuries happen, which are typically non-contact, and when your leg just kind of twists and collapse, which can lead to these injuries occurring. Skip through that. So let me pause there. So all of that said, I'm just going to leave you all with some of my general advice that I always give to people when they are at this stage, whether they are pre-med or they're in high school, whether they're in medical school, and they're thinking about like, what are those things that I need to do to kind of get to this phase of, being a physician one day. These are the things and the advice I was given and what really helped me along my journey. So first and foremost, staying organized is absolutely essential. As a medical student, as a resident, as a physician, you'll have a lot of different demands for your attention. I'm constantly being paged, texted, messaged by patients, while I'm also seeing 20 to 25 patients a day, navigating what's going on with my student athletes. So it's a lot to manage at once. And so the organizational skills that you will build now will help you when you get to your future to just navigate so many different competing tasks at once. It's also important, again, to just help you be able to do everything you want to do, right? Like do well in your standardized exams, volunteer, do service projects, do leadership projects. Organization is going to be super important to stay on top of all of those. So I have a planner. Oh, it's usually within arm's reach, but it's a little bit further than arm's reach. But I basically live my life by a kind of pen and paper planner. So I always encourage people find those tools that work best for them and stick to them. Staying curious and exploring until you find your passion. that is, like I said, I went into medical school thinking I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon, and it just didn't quite feel right. And I kept exploring and leaving myself open to other possibilities until I found this field that fits me perfectly. So keep exploring. Try not to tie yourself down very hard to any particular specialty or an idea of what your future will look like. It's important to have a goal and to have something to like work towards. But again, be flexible in that. You never know when you may be exposed to something that really fits with what you want to do for the future. As much as I love to talk about, the importance of other experiences and like, unique journeys and things of that, grades and standardized tests do matter. So working hard as you can to try to get as strong of scores as you can, because that will really be that opening door for you to get through that first step. So then people can then learn more about you when you get to that application process. So really take those seriously, work hard on that. Seek leadership positions. I've now been on admissions councils for medical school, for residency, for fellowship. And really, what stands out when we're looking at applicants is their leadership opportunities. I'm a leader each and every day when I step into my clinic. I am kind of leading my patients through what they're going through. I'm leading my nurses and my staff through, how to run our clinic. And so I'm leading my kind of athletic medicine team at St. John's. So leadership is inherent to medicine. So it's really important that we see that you're developing those skills right now. Um, Connecting with your teachers. This is something that I did not do enough of at all. When I was in undergrad, I was kind of like, I don't want to say like afraid of my teachers, but especially in those large classes, if you're in undergrad and you're in like a class of 200 people, it feels weird. It's like, how do I actually connect with this person who's like in front of this massive lecture hall? And so, but I realized when I got to junior year and started applying for med school, I was like, oh, shoot, I need someone to write me a letter of recommendation. And I haven't built those relationships with these teachers to help me do that. And so, what I realized late and had to scramble to do so, but was the importance of office hours. And so, actually, like going to those office hours, introducing myself, asking, doing some extra reading. So I had something else to talk to those teachers about. Asking the teachers about them, like, why did they get into this field? Like, what are they passionate about? Like, letting them know about what you're passionate about, like your goals in medicine or whatever field you want to go into. So, really important to think about, like, how can I connect with this person so they know who I am? One, because they're cool. They're not only like they write you a letter of recommendation one day, they may have an idea for like a summer internship, or they may like get you involved in research. Like there's more opportunities that can arise if you put yourself out there to connect. So really important. And then lastly, remembering to give back. And so being a doctor, I serve other people each and every day. And so it's really important if you want to work in this field that you have service at the core of your identity and of who you are. And so again, remembering in whatever way, whether it seems small as, helping somebody, like holding a door open for somebody in a grocery store, or it's as big as creating a program across, a school district in Los Angeles. Whatever you do is going to make a positive impact for other folks. So again, keeping that at the core of who you are, and taking care of your physical and mental health. Super important. Being in medicine is a long journey. Like I said, was 6 years old when I wanted to start this journey. And now, like 26 years later, I'm finally at the end of it. So it's a long journey. So definitely, exercise, sleep, go to therapy if need be, take your medications. Like it is a marathon, not a sprint. And so please, please, please take care of yourself physically and mentally along this path. And with that, that is all I have. So I am happy to turn it back over to you, Davina, or I can just kind of go through these questions.
Awesome. Okay, first, before we do questions, if everyone could give Dr. Woolridge a little round of applause on Zoom, that would be fantastic. It was a great presentation and really very insightful to not only hear about your journey into medicine, but also the fact that you've served on admissions committees as well and all of your different like trainings and different specialties. It was fantastic. So, I think what we'll do right now is take a few questions from people that want to raise their hands. So you can call them then if you'd like. And then after you do a couple of raised hands questions, you can go to the chat back and forth. When do you have to leave by? Because I don't mind staying back a little bit later and pushing our break to be a little bit shorter so that people can get their questions answered. But if you have to head out right in about 10 minutes or so, we also totally respect that.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be brief with my answers. I do have to head out right at 12 because I'm actually getting on a
Okay,
flight. So
perfect. No worries. Okay, so we'll be pretty brief with our questions. Just keep it to one question for everyone that has their hands raised so that we can get to as many people as possible.
and I was gonna say real quick, Davina, I can do quick responses to these, the chat ones real quick. Um, So let me hop into this. So I see Jemima asked about early assurance program for college students. I actually had gotten into one for at MIT. It was one, there's kind of a difference between like early admission versus early decision. So I got into a program where I was able to secure admission, but I could make a decision to go to another school if I wanted to, which I ultimately did. So that was helpful. If there's a specific like early assurance program, I'm not sure specifically beyond that, but that was the program that I was involved in. Residency programs are somebody asked, is a residency program assigned or are you required to apply for one and get accepted similar to med school? In the United States, yes, you have to do a residency if you want to practice medicine. And it is something you apply for. So I applied for like 15 different programs and you are accepted. There's this whole match process. If anyone feels like looking into the nitty gritty, like Google the residency match to learn more about it. But I matched into the UCSF program after kind of ranking which programs I was interested in going to. Somebody said, how has my MPH influenced the way I practice medicine and view patient care? I love that question, and I could go on a whole hour rant about it, but I will just say it really opened my mind to the ways in which the outside world has an impact on an individual and their health. I feel like there's a lot of people think someone's health is due to just themselves, right? Like, oh, if you have diabetes, it's because you ate too much sugar. If you have depression, it's just because you think that sad things all the time. Like, that's really not the case. There are a lot of different factors as it relates to where you live, what access to resources you have, how your family grew up, what type of traumas your ancestors may have faced. There's a lot of other factors that impact people's health, and so each and every day, I'm really trying to probe and like understand those factors that impact my patient's health. And so, yeah, that's my short answer. But again, that's a great question, and one I would definitely love to go in. The different aspects of the mental health program that I designed. So we were really trying to create something that would encompass not just that student, again, recognizing what I just said, all the things that affect health, but trying to encompass and educate teachers around mental health, as well as parents and families, and then also create infrastructure on the school space to help impact health in a positive way. And so part of that meant, infrastructure and staffing. So we got in more school psychologists and more mental health professionals where they could bring folks in. On the individual level, though, I created a curricula around mental health for middle school and high school students, and we incorporated daily mental health practices, kind of like mindfulness practices, affirmation practices that students were doing on a daily basis. We did a lot of events on like family back to school nights. So again, lots of ways that we, brought these mental health practices, normalizing them and bring them into the normal things in there. Somebody asked about how did I organize time between academic and extracurricular? It is so hard to find the balance between the two. I will say one, I was obsessed with my planner. I would, and I still do this day, sit down every Sunday and plan out my entire week. I will kind of schedule and block out, all right, what are the big assignments or things I need to do? And like, how do I just generally sprinkle that throughout the week so I'm not like getting too backed up on the things I need to do. So yeah, so I would say that was like I said, planning in advance, planning was the main thing. Um, perfect self-motivation leadership. Somebody said, what advice with your starting with your journey? I will say, especially when you're told being a doctor and specializing takes many years, sacrifices might not be worth it. It is so real. I would say first and foremost, though, the time is going to pass either way. Like whether you go into medical school or whether you don't, 10 years is going to pass. And so a lot of people will be like, oh, I just don't want to do it. And they spend 10 years working a desk job that they don't like, that they just kind of were like, oh, well, I'm just going to do something else because people scared me away from the journey. And then they just don't feel like successful or they don't feel satisfied in life. So really important to think about that and consider the fact that like the time is going to pass anyway. Like I want to lean into something that I feel strongly about and that really fits me. So that's really important too. Um, there's someone who'd said, I know Sanvi had a lot of questions here, so I'll just kind of focus on one or two here. What do wish I focused on during high school? I feel like I did a really good job in terms of I just took a lot of science classes that I could, human anatomy classes, biology classes, chemistry, which I think was great. And so just definitely taking any electives, extracurriculars that are science related would be what I encourage. Um, the habits, like I said, organization was huge. Everyone was like, Tiana, why do you have your planner everywhere? It was super, super important. Um, activities or habits that helped me later on. I would say really The only additional one I can think of beyond what I just said would be mindfulness. So I learned about mindfulness meditation when I was a college athlete, and that was really something that um, really was a game changer for me. And so I had a coach who taught us about like mindfulness as it relates to performance, right? And he was like, okay, really try to, when you're in that moment, you're in the middle of a game, it's a tight point, you know the ball's coming to you, you know, do these breathing techniques, so do these grounding techniques to like get yourself ready. And so that was really, really, really helpful and important for me to just like center myself and get things going there. And so I would really incorporate, and I told my old coach back in the day, I was like, I remember doing my surgery rotation. The first time I had to like suture up or close up the skin at the end of a surgery, and everyone's eyes were on me, and I was super nervous. I remember using those visualization and mindfulness techniques to like calm myself down and visualize myself doing that technique perfectly. And it worked and it really helped. So that was really fun. Okay, so I know there's a million more questions, which is awesome. I'm gonna pause to allow like maybe two more questions because I know lots of people have their hands raised. And so I'm gonna maybe have, two people come off of mute and do questions in that way. So Davina, I'll kind of let you run that process.
Sure. Okay. So I think first up we have Noah.
Thank you, Dr. Willard, Woolridge. I just wanted to first thank you for giving this presentation. It's been really insightful. What I wanted to ask was, I hear a lot about like students and residents going in and thinking they want to do this one thing for like their whole life, and then realizing that they kind of don't want it and realize that they're interested in something else. And I wanted to ask you, how do you like pivot from thinking that this is the thing I want to do my whole life, and then realizing maybe you didn't really want to do it once you're finally there?
Not easily, I will say. I just want to like really validate how hard that is. Like I remember when I was I remember a specific moment, it was November of my MPH year. I was like walking through Harvard's campus. It was like dark and snowy out. And I was on the phone with one of my friends and I was like whispering. I was like, I don't think I want to be an orthopedic surgeon. I think I want to be a pediatrician. And he's like, why are you whispering? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I felt this like weird sense of like I'm doing something wrong or like this is going to just like alter the entire world because like I want to shift gears on what I wanted to do. And at the end of the day, like it really was not that big of a deal. Like it is me that had tied myself so strongly to that thing. Like I said, built such an identity around it. But even at like when I got back to my mentors in orthopedic surgery and I told them I wanted to make the shift, they're like, awesome. They're like, I love that you found something that you're passionate about. Like, I love that, you're finding something that fuels you. And so it was me, like, it was getting over my own sense of like feeling so tied to something that didn't even really fit me anymore. And just being so rigid in that, that was that change maker. And so, like I said, just took talking to a lot of people, being kind to myself, learning self compassion, learning that it's okay to pivot and change. Because again, that pivot may turn into something that allows you to, step into what you're really, where you're really meant to be. So thank you for that question.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Next up we have Jada.
Hi, Dr. Woolridge. I first want to thank you for taking your time to, speak to us today. Your presentation was very inspiring. I really enjoyed it. Um, my question was, how did you kind of like learn to trust yourself throughout your journey to medicine? Because I know, especially like, being an undergrad, it's a lot of self-doubt. So, yeah, how did you learn to trust yourself throughout your journey?
Yes. Oh man, that is something that I have to learn each and every day. I think, even now and again, I want to validate and just normalize that feeling and that experience of like not always knowing if what you're doing is right because oftentimes like we just don't know. We truly, truly, literally do not know if what we're doing is the right thing in life. That's just part of being human. You never know until you look back on it and you're like, okay, well, yeah, I think that was the right thing. Even now to this day, when I am taking care of somebody who has some like strange, new, unusual condition that I haven't seen before, and I Google around or look in the literature and I find maybe something, some way this was treated in Singapore and some other country, and I'm like, okay, I'll do this here. Same thing. Like I'm doing something to the best of my knowledge and best of my ability, but like I don't always know if that's the right thing to do. And that's just life and that's medicine. Like we're always things are changing, like there's new diseases, new viruses that come up, like there's always uncertainty out there. And so being able to just remind yourself and again be compassionate with yourself and say, hey, I'm doing the best I can with the information, the knowledge that I have in front of me. And if it's wrong, so be it. Like I'm doing this with good intention and I am going after what I feel like is right in my core and like with all that I have in me. So again, I think it's more about just being compassionate to yourself and like making room and space for yourself to be right, to be wrong, to make mistakes because we're human and that's just going to happen along the way.
Thank
All
you.
right. And I know there was, of course, yes. I know there's lots more questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everyone, but maybe let's do one more before I have to wrap up here.
Okay, perfect. So we'll do Ayana and then we'll wrap up.
Hi, Dr. Ruwage. I just wanted to say thank you so much for giving your presentation. I really enjoyed it. My question for you is, I know you didn't mention this, but I wanted to say congratulations on launching your first children's book. I know it's called All the Wave, and it's inspired by your father and your aunt Vanessa Woolridge's bond. I wanted to know, um, what gave you the courage to not only author a children's book, but to integrate such a personal piece of your life into the book? Like, what do you want your readers to take away from your book?
Thank you so much for looking that up and for asking that. I really appreciate that. And it's a part of me that I like forget about so often because I get so embedded into the day to day of what I do in medicine that like I'm like, all right, I'm an author. So I will say again, recognizing that medicine is so and science in general can be so technical. I am somebody who does have like creative desires and outlets. Like I love to go to museums, I love to kind of go to shows, like engage in music and the arts and things like that. And so I was somebody who I did a lot of reading growing up. I used to write a lot as a kid, but all of that really fell off as I was going through my medical training. And so I remember when I was a freshman in college, that summer, my father passed away unexpectedly of a heart attack. And a couple years later, his sister also unexpectedly passed away, which was really sad and really awful and traumatic for the whole family. And as I was trying to just like sit and process and kind of think through it, I remember just how many people would say that like her dad, that my dad and Vanessa, his sister, were so similar to me and my brother. And at first I thought that was kind of weird, but then as I was thinking through it more, I was like, how beautiful that that sibling relationship has like lasted and is still alive through the relationship I share with my brother. And as I was again trying to process my grief, I found that writing was really healing for me. And so I actually decided to write a series. So there's actually two books out. I decided to write down me and my older brother's childhood stories, but using my dad's name and his sister's name as the main characters. And for me, that was just like incredibly, incredibly healing. So I wrote this story and I sat in it for 3 years. I didn't publish it. I just literally just had it written on a piece of paper. And I remember on the anniversary, 10th anniversary of my dad passing, I was like, I want to do something memorable to commemorate him and to commemorate his memory. And so I was like, let me just get this thing published. And so I kind of took it upon myself. I was in residency. It was madness. Like I had zero time to actually do this, but I found a children's book illustrator on Instagram. I DM'd her. I actually never talked to her. I've never seen her face to face. We literally communicated over email, like sent the ideas for the sketches to her. She produced them, sent them back to me. I would be on like midnight shifts, overnight, 12 a.m. in the intensive care unit, like in my off times and break times, emailing with her, be like, oh, can you make their eyes look a little bigger in this? Or can you make the background look a little more green? Or can you add this to this? And so it was just an incredible outlet, one for my own grief, and two, just to be able to use my brain in another way and just to be able to create something that's now out in the world forever that commemorates my family. So again, thank you so much for asking that. That was a beautiful way to end this. So appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you for answering. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Okay, awesome. We'll go ahead and let Dr. Woolridge leave. Safe travels. Thank you once again for your session and for sticking around to answer some questions. I've linked your Instagram as well, so people can follow you. Stay up to date with like your journey and a day in the days in your life. So yeah, we'll make sure that people are connected with you.
Amazing. Thank you all. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Amazing. Okay, and thank you so much, everyone, for asking really amazing questions. They were very insightful, very thoughtful, and we really appreciate everyone being so respectful. I know we didn't have time to get to everyone's questions today, just a quick reminder, we still have three guest speakers left. We have one tomorrow and two on Monday, and there'll be much more time for Q&A. So if you have a question, you will definitely be able to ask it within one of the next couple sessions, especially since we have two guest speakers on Monday as well. So now what I'll go ahead and do is send out our first attendance form. It's going to be live for 10 minutes, and it's going to just be posted in the Zoom chat. So I've just linked it now. Please try not to spam the chat right now just so the form doesn't get lost. But this will be open for 10 minutes. Please fill it out quickly. It's just the first attendance for this session. There's going to be another attendance form at the end. This is just how we make sure that people join live. And yeah, so right now in the schedule, we have a break. So there's going to be a 10-minute break until 12:15. So right now the local time for me is 12:05 or now just 12:06. So we're going to take a break until 12:15, so just about 10 minutes. Then we'll come back and then Ahmad, who's our executive director, is going to be doing our emergency medicine workshop. And then I have a workshop as well afterwards. So take a little break now, stretch your legs, grab a snack. I know that for some of you, this camp is happening during your lunchtime. So, go talk to people, stretch, have a little scroll break, whatever you need to do. And we will see you back here in 9 minutes. Use those 9 minutes also to fill out the attendance form because it'll close soon. But we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Hey everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started with our workshop that Maud's going to run. So Maud's our executive director here. He's actually been working with us either since 2021 or 2022. And so he's going to be doing our emergency medicine workshop. There are a couple of questions that he's going to ask you throughout. So if you want to respond in the chat, you're more than welcome to. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to him.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Hi, I'm Ahmad. I'm the executive director here at Mist Empowered. And it's so awesome to see so many lovely faces here joining us for our winter camp. Before we get started, I want to see how you all are feeling, and I'll give everyone a second to turn their cameras back on. I know it's mid-afternoon on a Saturday after a holiday, so just showing up today really shows your motivation and courage for pursuing a field that you're so passionate about and taking some time out of your winter break to join us. So how's everyone feeling today? I'll check the chat today. 6. Me too. I think I'm feeling around a 6, 7. That's funny. Anyways, I'm feeling around a 6 as well. And yeah, yeah. So I see other people are feeling 9, some people are tired. A mix of 6 and 8. I see 7. Okay, I see. Okay, yeah. So everyone, I'm glad that everyone is showing up today. I'm really excited to lead this workshop. Emergency medicine and CPR skill training is so essential, um, especially since around 400,000 out of hospital cardiac arrests occur yearly. And about 88% of those occur at home, but only about 32% of people ever get CPR. And this again is based on a lot of different factors. And if you study public health and try to understand the determinants of why some people choose to take action in such cardiac arrest, you'll understand that it can be really hard, especially since a lot of time when you get CPR training, you either get it through, a virtual mode, or you never get to actually practice on a real patient. So it's always just important to have those skill set developed, just to ensure that you're ready in case there's ever an emergency. And today again we'll go over some basics of CPR. CPR, there's different levels of CPR based on different work settings. If you're in a healthcare setting, traditionally you're getting BLS training certified. If you're getting CPR just as a normal adult CPR training, there's typically a level A CPR training, and this is kind of just teaches you the basic kind of compression rates of traditional CPR. And then there's different levels as well. For example, there's level C CPR, and this usually it includes infant CPR, infant and children CPR, as well as how to kind of use an AED. Has anyone here ever taken a CPR course or ever had to perform CPR? Okay, good. I see. Okay, so everyone has a basic understanding. You've taken a course, yes. So everyone should have a kind of a basic foundation. Again, today I want to kind of just do a refresher on the basics, as well as kind of introduce some scenarios if we have time at the end on some ways to practice some of the skills. Again, like I took my CPR course when I was in high school, and now I'm a senior at college. So it's been a while for like it usually is a while. You take courses and typically can kind of forget the nitty-gritty details and stuff. I got some training again this past fall on CPR. But it's always important kind of just have a good background understanding of how to perform CPR in case if you have to perform it. Okay, so we'll move on to kind of first examining the 3 C's in CPR assistance. So whenever you are performing CPR, typically you want to ensure that you are following the 3 C's. And the 3 C's include you want to first check the scene. You want to check the area, the patient. We'll kind of dive into what this looks like in a few minutes. But also then you want to call 911 or emergency services. Now, I know a lot of people are joining from different parts of the world, so I also want to make a disclaimer that this workshop is based on guidelines established by the American Heart Association, or the way the American cardiac units have kind of developed this approach. So this may be different based on what country you're joining in from, but again, the same skill set is typically prioritized and discussed. But again, like, for example, we would say call 911, but that would be your local emergency unit that you would call that might not necessarily look like if you're not in the United States. So yeah, the first kind of step in CPR again would be checking the scene, checking the area, and checking the patient. And we'll kind of dive into exactly how this looks like. So if you are arriving at the scene, you typically want to kind of check the scene and the area. So for example, you want to see if there is any imminent danger to you. For example, you want to make sure that there's not a fire, if there's a gas leak, is there glass, is there wire? So you want to make sure that you are safe before you enter an environment. So if you potentially think that there is a gas leak, you don't want to put yourself at danger. Um, and you usually want to take 1 to 3 seconds to ensure that you are safe before you enter the scene. And you also don't want to engage if there are firearms present or if you think that entering the scene would cause danger to you. So it's always just really important that you check the scene and establish that it's safe before you enter and provide assistance. And then again, checking the area. So if you see a knife, again, this is important. If you enter a scene and you see that a patient has like a knife in their chest, it's important that you do not remove it because helping keep the wound stable just ensures that the patient doesn't further bleed out or hemorrhage. So if you arrive at a scene and you see that a patient has a knife, you're gonna immediately call 911, make sure that you don't remove the wound because the wound is actually keeping the blood intact. And so ensure the patient doesn't hemorrhage out. And then if the patient is conscious, you'd want to ask them some just basic questions to keep them alert. And then typically, when you're arriving at a scene and, for example, you need to assess the scene and there's multiple patients that could require emergency assistance, you typically want to prioritize looking at babies or children first before you move on to parents or guardians because they're a lot more fragile. So again, the next is you want to check the patient's again, after you check the scene in the area, you want to check the patient. And this you want to check the ABCs. And this includes the airways, the breathing, and the circulation. So is the patient's airway open? So making sure that they're able to breathe. Which again leads to breathing. Are they able to effectively breathe? Is there some sort of blockage that may prevent the patient from breathing and ensuring that they get fresh O2, as well as to make sure that they have a pulse and circulation is kind of what you want to check. I'll see if there's any questions before I move on. Okay, we can keep questions towards the end as well. So there's typically different scenarios. And today's scenario, we're going to focus on kind of the unconscious patient. So this would be someone that, for example, is unconscious and might need CPR or some other emergency assistance. So again, the first if you arrive at a scene and the patient is unconscious, first you again would want to examine the scene. So you want to assess for any sharp objects, poisonous gas, natural disasters. And if the patient is conscious, again, in our scenario today, they won't be conscious. You would want to kind of introduce yourself and ask for consent. Ask for consent. If the patient gives consent, then you can proceed. If not, you just call 911. So again, if you are helping a patient, if you start to help someone, don't stop until EMS arrives or a patient starts breathing again. Typically, when you're giving CPR, it can kind of exert a lot of physical force, and it can exert on yourself as well. So you always, if you have bystanders that can help, that can always be very helpful in ensuring that you're not stressing yourself out or causing the patient, again, you want to make sure that you are safe and comfortable when you're performing CPR. So typically, if there's a bystander, you can kind of refer them to call 911 or kind of aid you in helping with delivering the CPR. So when you arrive at a scene, who do you help first? I would ask the question to see if, so do you first, again, you assess, again, yeah, you want to help the children, but again, first you want to ensure that you are safe before you enter the environment. Exactly. So even before you help children or adult, you want to make sure that you are safe and that you are entering an environment that you're able to perform CPR and that you're not putting yourself at danger. All right. So Typically, when you arrive at a scene at an unconscious patient, you can call 911. And typically, when you're going to perform CPR, you're doing it on the basis of a Good Samaritan law, which is pretty much that you're providing faithful treatment to someone. So typically, most countries have laws that protect the patient, protect you in case that I know this is a common misconception as well, people that people have. So it's important that you understand that if you're helping perform CPR on someone, they can't come back at you later and be like, "Oh no, I didn't want this treatment," or try to, there's been in the past people saying that that they did not consent to the treatment. In the United States and in most countries, you have something called implied consent, which ensures that you are covered by that you are covered in case that any legal issues arrive in the future. So the first thing you'll do, again, you'll walk to the patient, ensure that the scene is safe, and ensure that they are first laying on their back and that their airways are safe. And then you want to make sure that that if they're unconscious, they might just be like, for example, like not able to respond. So you just want to clap at their ears, tap on their shoulders, ask if they're okay. I also have seen people tap their shoulders to stimulate kind of muscle contractions in their neck because you have your trap muscle in your back, and typically if you pinch it really hard, if someone is unconscious, that can like wake them up. Then you would call 911 and ask another person if they're needing CPR to bring an AED. And then again, you want to make sure that their airway is intact. So you want to tilt their chin back and then the second thing you will do is kind of place your ear by their nose and look at their chest to see if they are breathing. And you'll check your ABCs, airway, breathing, and circulation. And you do this for about 5 to 10 seconds. Moving on. Okay, after you check the scene, and if they're unconscious and if they're breathing, so they don't require CPR, you can put them in recovery position. And recovery position just ensures that if someone is going to throw up, or if someone is gonna like possibly, have an incident of vomit, that they don't choke on their vomit. So you want to make sure that you kind of bend their elbows and their knees to the same side and gently roll them over to the side and put their hand under their head. And this again ensures that their airway continues to stay intact. Again, before you moving on, you always want to check the ABCs and make sure they're intact. So the airways, the breathing, and the circulation. And then sometimes if someone is unconscious, they might not require CPR. Some people typically like maybe unconscious due to, for example, an overdose. That's a common scenario that a lot of EMTs encounter, as well as if someone has low blood glucose. In medicine, what is the term that we use to kind of characterize low blood glucose? This is a pop quiz.
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
Yes, the question is, in medicine, what term do we use to kind of characterize low blood glucose? I think a lot of people are getting it. Yes, hypoglycemia. Perfect. So yeah, when someone is hypoglycemic, this can also cause someone to pass out because the brain needs glucose to function. And if there's not enough glucose, that can cause someone to pass out. So okay, now the next scenario is if someone is unconscious, they're not breathing, and this typically involves you having to perform CPR. So modern day CPR is kind of different than the CPR recommendations changed in around 2023, where a lot of people now you don't really need to perform mouth CPR, and this is because CPR being performed, compression CPR is much more effective and it's easier to do, and it kind of eliminates this bystander effect because some people aren't comfortable doing that. So now that like the American Heart Association recommends that most trainings just be done in order to allow someone to be able to perform effective compressions. So performing adults CPR, children CPR, and CPR and babies kind of is different because for adults, for example, compressions are at a rate of 5 centimeters depth. For children, it's around 1/3. And then for babies, you're kind of doing finger compressions. Again, in a CPR level A course, you typically will learn how to do CPR generally on an adult and not on children or babies. But again, the more experience that you get and the different levels of CPR certification there are, you kind of get exposed to this. But typically, a normal CPR course will have adult CPR training. And typically, what you want to do is you want to have your hands interlocked and over a person's sternum. I kind of provided an image of where you want to put your hand. Again, it's going to be directly over their sternum, and then you're going to do some compressions around 5 centimeters at depth. Typically, like the rate. Once you practice it a few times, you kind of get it down. But there's songs right now, like you can look up, or a metronome. Staying Alive is a very popular one where you kind of get to learn kind of the rate at which you're going at. And typically the rate is around 100 to 120 compressions a minute, followed by 2 rescue breaths. Again, it's more important that you are able to perform effective compressions than being able to do rescue breaths. So again, that is again prioritized. And then if you're a baby, it's the same thing, but the depth of the compression is a little less. And the same thing for babies, you're going to do finger compressions. Again, if you take a CPR course, you're able to kind of do this on mannequins. I did my CPR course and I did it on mannequins, and I realized that I was going too far in depth, too far deep. So I had to kind of adjust to make sure I was able to perform an effective compression. And then there are typically other tools that are also used, especially if you're working on an ambulance. You can use an ambu pump, a defibrillator. Again, a defibrillator is also kind of used to kind of restart the electrical currents of the heart. And if you have access to it, it's a really effective tool that you can use. And this defibrillators are actually really cool because they kind of help guide you on where to put the patches, when to perform chest compressions, when there is a signal ready for the AED to be used. So it can be very effective, an effective aid when you're performing CPR. So now I wanted to kind of take what I know, like I provided a lot of different skills and ideas. I wanted to put into this video. I think this video does a really effective job of kind of showing how someone arrives at a scene all the way to when CPR is performed. This video does show breathing when someone is using mouth-to-mouth CPR. Again, that is not kind of recommended anymore by this American Heart Association, but it's still something that can be performed. But I will kind of make sure that this video is that you're able to listen to it. I'm gonna go over to this. Let me know if everyone can listen to it. It's a quick video, and then we'll have a discussion after.
Adult is unresponsive and not breathing normally, you need to perform CPR straight away. CPR stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation. It combines chest compressions and rescue breaths to give a person the best chance of survival following a cardiac arrest. If you find someone collapsed, make sure it's safe to approach. Check if they respond by gently shaking their shoulders and asking them loudly, "Are they okay?" If they don't respond, shout for help and open their airway by gently tilting the casualty's head back and lifting their chin. Look, listen, and feel for up to 10 seconds for normal breathing. If they are unresponsive and not breathing, you should call 999 or 112 straight away. Use the hands-free speaker on a phone so you can start CPR while speaking to ambulance control. Start CPR. Kneel by the casualty and put the heel of your hand in the middle of their chest. Put your other hand on top of the first and interlock your fingers. Keep your arms straight and lean over the casualty so your shoulders are over your hands. Press down hard to a depth of about 5 to 6 centimeters before releasing the pressure, allowing the chest to come back up. Repeat the compressions 30 times at a rate of 100 to 120 compressions per minute. The beat of the song Staying Alive can help you keep the right rate. If someone is with you, ask them to find a defibrillator. You can use www.defibfinder.uk to locate your nearest one. Otherwise, wait for the ambulance to bring one. After 30 compressions, you need to give 2 rescue breaths. If possible, use a face shield to protect from infection. Tilt the head back with one hand on the forehead and lift the chin with 2 fingers from the other hand to open the airway. Pinch the soft part of the nose shut and let the mouth open. Keep the head tilted, take a breath, and seal your mouth over theirs. Blow for 1 second until the chest rises. Then remove your mouth and watch the chest fall. If the chest doesn't rise, make sure the airway is open. If you're not trained or don't want to give rescue breaths, keep doing chest compressions without stopping. Keep doing CPR with 30 chest compressions and 2 rescue breaths until emergency help arrives and takes over. The person starts breathing normally. You are too tired to continue. A defibrillator is ready to use. If someone is helping, switch every 1 to 2 minutes with as little pause as possible. If the helper returns with a defibrillator, ask them to switch it on and follow the voice prompts while you continue with CPR. Keep checking their response and be ready to start CPR again if needed. Each year, 30,000 people have an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest in the UK. Less than 1 in 10 survive. Giving CPR promptly and using a defibrillator can more than double someone's chance of survival. You should check for breathing, call emergency services, give 30 chest compressions, give 2 rescue breaths, continue 30 to 2 until help arrives. If they respond, put them in the recovery position.
All right. So I hope that kind of summarized some of the main points again, that is needed when you are to perform CPR. And now I want to kind of move on to you actually seeing if you're able to perform effective CPR. So if everyone can grab a pillow near them, and try and imitate what it would look like to perform CPR. For example, check the scene, make sure it's safe, walk up to the patients, kind of clap on either side of their shoulders or the edge of a pillow, ask if they're okay, and then kind of go on and perform CPR by doing an effective chest compression to kind of just get into the flow of the practice of performing CPR. Give everyone 1 minute, and in the meantime, when you guys are kind of overviewing, does anyone want to, like, based on what you learned today, provide kind of an overview on how you would perform CPR? So now I want to see if someone else can teach kind of the material that I presented today. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to interact and do an overview of how you would go about performing CPR. Noah.
So I was taught in EMT school, you're make sure your scene is safe. Make sure your scene is safe. You check your ABCs, make sure your patient airway is clear, check to see if they're breathing, and then make sure that the rest of their body is fine.
Correct,
If
yes.
they are unconscious and breathing, you might want to try, like you said, clap the side of their shoulders. We were taught to do a sternal rub or pinch the side of the ear, since that usually does get people awake.
Yes.
If they don't respond to that, usually, and they're not breathing, you can start CPR on them. If they are breathing, you can place them in the recovery position. But if you need to start CPR, you take usually your dominant hand on the bottom, interlock it with your non-dominant hand, and then place it right below their sternum and begin pushing, usually to the beat of Staying Alive. There's a few other songs that apply. I know the Imperial March from Star Wars also applies.
Yes, I've heard about that.
So you press down for about 30 compressions, then give 2 rescue breaths. And if it's just you, you go until you're tired or until help gets there. If you have another person with you, you make sure to one, have that person call the ambulance, call somebody, and then if if that other person is helping you, you usually try and switch every 1 to 2 minutes or until someone is tired. And you continue until EMS is on the scene, or if you're able to get a defibrillator or an AED, you apply it, use it. If it doesn't work, then you continue compressions for another minute, reapply
Correct.
it until it works or until EMS is on the scene.
Perfect. Great. No, that was an amazing comprehensive overview of what we discussed. Great job. I think you provided great insights. So I'm going to answer a few questions that I found in the chat. What if an AED isn't available? Again, if an AED isn't available, the most important thing to do is focus on effective chest compressions. And again, yeah, child AED versus adult AED have different shock requirements as well. And the position, so once you've performed CPR and if a patient regains consciousness, you want to just put them in the recovery position. So in this question, perfect. Okay, so I want to also provide some insights on how you can be involved. Again, because CPR rates are so low and a lot of people have learned to do CPR, but haven't performed it in public or have only learned kind of through a verbal course, there's a lot of opportunities that you can get involved in providing CPR education in your communities. At the University of Texas at Austin this semester, I was able to help bring and get a grant for the university to be able to provide CPR training on campus sites through the American Heart Association's Heart Club. So if you're interested in kind of providing education and providing CPR education as well as kind of getting involved in this space, the American Heart Association has a ton of opportunities to get involved, and the Heart Club is just one of them to bring CPR education, some tools and skills that you learn today into your own communities. So I will go ahead and hand over the mic now to Davina to go into the second part of the workshop. We have some on this slide deck. I also kind of overviewed vitals and some other medical diagnostic tools, which I will share after today's presentation, but just for the sake of time, we'll keep it at this. And again, this presentation today can be found in the public Google Drive folder on Slack, I believe, and the program website.
Okay, awesome. And then a little round of applause for Ahmad, if everyone can do that as well, for leading our CPR workshop today. It was fantastic. We really appreciate all of the information and the interactives as well. I also wanted to say that if you do a specific type of CPR class, so I've done the basic CPR class as well as the emergency first aid and CPRC. And so typically they give you a rescue mask and a face shield as well. So I keep this in my backpack actually at all times in case I'm ever in a situation where I might need to use it. Thankfully, I haven't had to use it yet, but if you take a class like that, it's helpful to keep this in a place where, you might be using it all the time. So for example, like you're going to school every day, keeping it in your backpack. But these are what the actual like respiratory masks look like. So you put this around the patient. And then you breathe the rescue breaths in the top part here, and then the air goes into their mouth here. And the reason we use these types of respiratory masks is to prevent you, the person performing CPR, is to prevent you from getting any sort of respiratory disease. And one thing that I do really want to get that I don't have yet in my kind of emergency kit is naloxone. So there's an increasing opioid crisis, especially in certain parts of the United States. And what naloxone does is it binds to those opioid receptors in your brain and it doesn't have an effect. What opioids do is they bind to those opioid receptors in your brain. And then what that actually does is it stops you from breathing. So it binds to receptors that control breathing. And then if you stop breathing, you unfortunately pass away. So what I want to do in the next couple of months is get a naloxone kit. You can typically actually find those for free in a pharmacy near you. And so if anyone is ever experiencing an opioid overdose, you can administer that. So it's important to have some emergency first aid materials with you at all times. You just never know what situation you might be in. And, disaster always strikes at the most unexpected time. So I try to be prepared. And by teaching you the CPR workshop, we're hoping that we can better equip you to perform CPR or like do emergency procedures and be a little bit more prepared. Oh, someone asked if I can show that again because I wasn't pinned. I will go ahead and add a spotlight for myself. So this is the respiratory mask I was talking about. So I got this in a CPR class that I did a couple of years ago. So again, you put this around the patient, you breathe in the top here, and the air goes out the bottom here. So you kind of just put this right on top of the person, kind of like that. So yeah, I would do that. And someone's asking, is there an instant giveaway sign or a symptom that would suggest opioid OD, or is it just environmental clues? Unfortunately, if you don't really know the person super well, it might just be environmental clues. But yeah, I wish I had more information that I could share with you about that. That would be a little bit more helpful. But yeah, dilated pupils as well. But very helpful to have things like this on you. So I think this kit even has like a bandage in it as well. So there's a bandage, there's face shields, there's gauze, good to keep on you at all times. I'm very grateful I haven't had to use either of these yet, but I do keep it with me at all times, especially because I also work in a hospital. So, okay, awesome. Ahmad's slides for our workshop today. I just wanted to show everyone those things before we move on. So Ahmad's slides are posted in our Google Drive. I sent out the Google Drive link as well. So now we'll get started with my workshop. So thank you again to Ahmad for doing our emergency medicine slideshow and presentation today. But for my workshop, I'm going to be kind of taking everyone through the pathways that you can pursue if you want to have a career in medicine and STEM. So I actually have a little Mentimeter that I wanted everyone to participate in. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. So if you don't know how Mentimeter works, it's just a platform that allows people to, share their responses to a specific prompt, and then it kind of all pops up as a word cloud. So what you can do is, let me just move people to the side, but you can go to this website that's listed at the top, so menti.com, and then use that code that's there. But I just want you to type in, what comes to mind when you think of specific careers in medicine and healthcare or STEM. So just, put the first thing that pops into your mind and then type it in and submit it there. And I'll give everyone a few minutes to put their responses in. I think the Mentimeter only allows 50 responses. So if you want to type your response in the chat as well, that's totally fine. I just wanted to use this because the words that you see here that are bigger are common words that people have put in. So for example, a lot of you have said research and surgery and physician, doctor, neurology, compassion. Yeah, there's lots of great responses here. And there's honestly a good variety of different careers. And that's kind of the point of us doing this winter camp as well, is to expose you to different careers and fields and specialties in science and medicine, because typically people think that in order to get involved with science and medicine and pursue a career in these fields, you can either be a scientist or you can be a doctor. But that's not at all the case. There are tons and tons of specialties, tons of different fields, tons of different careers. And so we want to expose you to them so that, maybe you find something that is better suited to your specific interests. We just don't want you to think that being a doctor or being a scientist is the only way to make a difference in healthcare and medicine. I'll check the chat as well to see what people are saying. Yeah, research, dermatology, immunology. Yeah, these are all great. They're different kind of subspecialties of medicine. I'm seeing more of a focus on physicians and specialties and fellowships within medicine as opposed to science, which is totally okay. But it's interesting to note that. And yeah, I think it's great that there's such a wide variety of responses here. And I think I agree with everything that's being said, but I definitely understand that, if someone asks you, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of a specific career in medicine and STEM, you think a doctor, scientist, research, surgery, being a nurse, engineering. Yeah, but this is perfect. Thank you so much for participating in that. I'll go ahead and stop that for now, but I just wanted to get an idea of what what you were thinking, and what science and medicine and healthcare, what all of that means to you. So now we'll go ahead and start my actual workshop. Again, these slides have been posted in our Google Drive, so everything's there if you need it, if you want to follow along, if you want to annotate. If you take notes throughout the workshop, you can also submit them at the end of the program for volunteer hours. So that's also helpful. So there are tons of different careers in STEM and medicine. I was trying to do some research and quantify this for you, and honestly, I can't. There are dozens upon dozens of different careers in science, technology, engineering, math, or STEM, and medicine. So these are just some of the careers that you can pursue if you're interested in science, technology, engineering, math. So some of the core scientist careers, like I've already mentioned, so you would be a biologist, a neuroscientist, biomedical scientist. There's botany, so that deals with plants. There's also pharmacy. So there are specific PharmD programs that universities offer as well. And actually, we had a guest speaker a couple of summer programs ago where she was a pharmacist, but she actually worked in tandem with the physicians at her hospital to consult with patients because each patient presents specific needs. So she would actually consult with the physicians to, prescribe different types of medications or make recommendations. So it was actually a very patient involved process. And I think sometimes when we think of pharmacy, we might be predisposed to think that a lot of the work happens behind the counter. But we had a great guest speaker who showed us that she actually really works in tandem with the patients as well. And I thought that was really interesting. So we have that. There's ecology, genetic counseling as well, medical lab scientists, tons of different fields in engineering, psychology, being a school science tech, political science, different types of UI designers, actuarial science, medical liaisons. So, with medical liaisons and especially medical sales reps, there are different types of large companies that will produce different types of medications, and then there's all these conferences, and so these medical sales reps and liaisons will be responsible for kind of communicating that information to the public to make their product or service a little bit more widespread. And it's kind of a cool career. And so if you're interested in that, I'd highly recommend taking a look at it. But what I would definitely recommend that one piece of, non-official homework for this winter camp would be to just pick one career on this slide that you don't know anything about and just do a little bit of research into it to see what it is. You may not find that it's to your interest, but I think it's nice to kind of learn about things that you don't really know anything about currently. So pick something on the slide that you don't really know anything about and do a little research, see what it actually is, because I learned some stuff as well when I was creating this workshop for the program. And so then, of course, we get into our careers that are specifically medicine and healthcare. So yes, obviously physicians. So being any sort of doctor, either, being an MD, a medical doctor, or a DO, which is a doctor of osteopathic medicine. So that's a bit of a more naturalistic and holistic approach to medicine. We have radiology techs, physician's assistant. So that's PA school. And often PAs actually have a similar amount of authority as physicians, and the schooling um, is a little bit different and a little bit shorter as well. So it's a great option for people to consider. There's phlebotomy, dentistry, and there's tons of different types of dentists as well. So we had a guest speaker a couple of years back who does cosmetic dentistry and was explaining to us the science behind having a smile that we're happy with. And it was really interesting. That was an asynchronous section, so you can find it on our YouTube channel. But yeah, there are different types of dentistry, podiatrists, chiropractors, acupuncturists, and then on the right-hand side, just really so many more different types of careers that you can pursue, like occupational therapy, physical therapy, being a vet, being a speech language pathologist. A lot of these involve, actually, most, if not all of these involve interactions and, taking care of physical, like human patients. Obviously, for vets, you're taking care of animals. There's therapy. Again, I would definitely recommend if there's something on the slide that you don't know right now, you're not familiar with that career, I would just recommend picking one thing on this slide and doing a little bit of research into it. You might learn something or learn a new opportunity or a new career pathway that you didn't know before. And the only reason we don't go into every single career here is because there's so many, and that would take forever. So how much schooling is required to pursue a career in STEM and medicine? It's very varied. So if we're thinking about core programs like graduate programs in science, medical school, PA school, typically at least a 4-year undergraduate program with an emphasis on biology, chemistry, physics, and mathematics courses. For specific specialties, so for example, if you're applying to medical school, you'll be taking your MCAT as well. There are some medical schools that do not require an MCAT, but most do. And so this MCAT assesses your knowledge across a variety of different STEM disciplines, as well as, psychology, social knowledge, and then critical analysis and reasoning skills, or the CARs. And then later on, when you're in medical school, there are unfortunately a lot of exams you still have to take right up until, being a certified doctor. And in addition to this, type of schooling, there's also extracurriculars that you should be getting involved with. So I'll go into a little bit more detail later on about, what specific extracurriculars you should be getting involved with for the specific period of school that you are in right now. But just, to cover the basics, research experience, so working in a lab, could be even just volunteering in a lab as well. Clinical shadowing, so shadowing a doctor or a PA or a nurse. Volunteering, you can volunteer at a hospital, you can do all other volunteering as well. And then leadership in clubs. So, being a director of a club, a vice president, a secretary, having a continued leadership position, and then also having continued leadership. So showing these schools that you have participated in these activities for multiple years shows commitment. And then, of course, obviously having hobbies and sports as well. So I have included a couple of different options here and the education model and the requirements. I won't go through all of this right now for the sake of time, but I just wanted to include this here in case you didn't know about the actual option of PA school. So it's a 3-year program. It's in the basic medical sciences. You still have a clinical stage, you do rotations, you're still like working with patients, and you're awarded a master's degree. So you do have to do a recertification exam every 10 years, and the requirements are pretty similar. Completion of a bachelor's degree, which is typically a 4-year program. Sometimes people do it in 3 years, sometimes even more. And some of the, common prereqs I've already mentioned here. And then typically schools will have a GPA requirement as well. GPA requirements vary from school to school, but typically a 3.5 or a 3.6. Some schools also require the GRE, which is a graduate school exam, and it assesses your knowledge in like verbal, quantitative reasoning, and analytical writing. But for those of you that are not in university or college yet, this doesn't super apply to you right now. It's just good information to have for the future. So again, for your applications, you have to write a personal statement. So you're trying to effectively communicate your own personal story. And then for accelerated programs, there are a couple of different schools that offer accelerated programs. Sometimes you can do your bachelor's degree and your master's degree in PA school at the same time. So some schools offer that, most don't, but it's a good way if you're trying to kind of speed up the process a little bit. So another important thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was the difference between DO school and being an MD. So being a DO is a doctor of osteopathic medicine versus an MD is what you traditionally think about. So there are some similarities between the education model and the requirements, but by being an MD, you are teaching and practicing allopathic medicine, whereas for DO school, you're teaching osteopathic medicine. So that's learning to provide holistic and more natural care. You still have to have a 4-year curriculum in, some sort of program that provides you with, classes and experience in science, but they are different approaches to medicine and they do have different requirements. So the GPA requirement for DO school is a little bit lower to 3.57, and this was in 2020, so it's probably changed since then. And then for being an MD, the GPA requirement is a little bit higher at being a 3.71. Same for the MCAT, a little bit lower for DO school and a little bit higher for MD school. Still, of course, you need clinical experience, community service, but if this is something you're interested in, I'd recommend looking to see if there are any DO schools near you and consider, submitting an application to them as well. So again, more application tips and accelerated programs here. I won't go through all of this information, but it is included in the slides. I'd recommend, doing some research on this, and then if you have any questions, you can also post any follow-up questions in our channel on Slack. And then dental school. So we've had some really fantastic dentists come in to speak through our program. And I know from reading our introductions on Slack that some of you are interested in being dentists as well, which is awesome. It's kind of a similar process to med school in that, yes, you need 4 years for an undergraduate degree and then 4 years of dental school for a DDS or a doctor of dental surgery. Sometimes if you want to do specific fellowships like being an orthodontist, prosthodontist, cosmetic dentist, that takes a little bit of extra time as well. But for medical school, anyways, you're doing a residency, so the time requirements are pretty similar. And it's great if you're interested in, the science and the practice and care of our teeth. So there are some application tips here, as well as some universities that have accelerated programs as well. I know, like Dr. Woolridge was mentioning earlier, one of the big concerns when people think about applying to medical school is just the amount of time it's going to take. Because on top of the 4-year undergraduate program, you need 4 years of med school, then you need 4 to 6 years of a residency, and then potentially even more time for a fellowship as well. So that's why we wanted to kind of include some information about accelerated programs. But really, like she mentioned earlier as well, better to pursue something that you'll really enjoy and give it a shot. So for nursing school and through reading your introductions on staff, I know some of you are also considering nursing school, which is awesome. There are tons of different options here. You can be a nurse practitioner, and actually nurse practitioners sometimes have the same amount of authority as physicians, especially for pediatric nurse practitioners. So they can prescribe medication, they can see patients on their own, they can treat and diagnose without supervision. For a master's of nursing, I think there's a little bit more autonomy and authority there, but still not as much as being a nurse practitioner. And then, of course, having your bachelor's of science in nursing, so being an RN, it's more competitive. It's a 4-year program, and then you graduate and you're able to work as a nurse. So now I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about getting involved with medicine in high school and undergrad, medicine and research, just the extracurricular process. So there are a couple of different opportunities here that I'd recommend you look into. So if you're looking into specifically pre-med opportunities, there's HOSA. This is for students that live in the US, and I know that a lot of you are not residing in the US for this program. There's anatomy and physiology classes, so just doing science classes, medical internships, volunteering, shadowing. I'm sure you've heard of all of this by this point. And then research opportunities. So I've had a lot of experience cold emailing professors at universities to find research experience. So I'm happy to provide advice on how to create a really, really good cold email to get a response from a professor to allow yourself to work in their lab, either in a volunteer position or at a master's level, at a PhD level, at an undergraduate thesis level. But it's really impressive when undergraduates have research experience, especially continued research experience. So working in the same lab for multiple years, or just, working in different labs across a period of multiple years. And I know that the process to finding research opportunities is sometimes very overwhelming and you're not really sure where to start. So hopefully we can make that process a little bit less scary. And then, of course, STEM opportunities. So I know some of you have participated in science Olympiads through reading your introductions, participating in like math bowls, becoming a tutor. And then I also want to talk specifically about getting involved with the Brain Bee because this is actually the perfect time to get involved. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my specific journey in neuroscience. When I started undergrad, I was actually considering applying to med school, but as I progressed in my neuroscience journey, I'm very passionate about neuroscience, and I've always known that I've wanted to work in a career that involved the science of the brain in some capacity. But as I progressed in undergrad, I realized more that what really fulfilled me was teaching and education and kind of experiences like this where I get to, teach workshops, organize things at a very high level, and kind of run things on my own. So I ended up not applying to medical school or deciding that medical school wasn't really the best fit for me. But I wanted to take you through what my journey specifically is. So I applied to a bunch of universities in the US and Canada, so I'm a dual citizen. And I ended up choosing a university based on the strength of their neuroscience program. So I wanted to make sure they had good classes in neuroscience because that was what I was really interested in. And because I knew I wanted to pursue graduate school in some capacity, I also made a decision to attend a university based on cost. So I ended up attending McMaster University, which is in Ontario. I specialized in their neuroscience program, and I did a bunch of neuroscience courses, research. I did a third year research project, a fourth year thesis, and now I'm doing a master's thesis as well at a different university. I joined a bunch of, actually, I didn't join a bunch of different societies. I joined the McMaster Neuroscience Society, and I had a bunch of different roles within it. I helped organize the Brain Bee, which is a high school neuroscience event. So for those of you in high school, I would highly recommend considering participating in the Brain Bee event, which should be happening within the next few months. Then I also did a neuroscience thesis as well. So when I applied to graduate school, I sent out about 82 cold emails to supervisors. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what a cold email is, it's essentially emailing a professor you don't know and you say, hello, my name is, these are my certifications and qualifications. I really like your research. Typically, you read one of their scientific publications, you ask them an insightful question about it, and then you attach like a very strong CV or a resume. And so I sent out a bunch of different emails to supervisors across 4 to 5 different universities. Then I ended up at the University of Toronto, and I'm still involved with neuroscience outreach here. I helped out with the Toronto Brain Bee last year, which is this really huge event. And then I also served on my program's academics committee as well. And so my goal is to be a teaching stream professor. So a professor that teaches classes in neuroscience and is involved with science outreach in the community because that's what I'm really passionate about. And I'm also happy to answer any questions that you have about this specific process as well, if any of this sounds interesting to you. I also wanted to talk to you about the Brain Bee. So it's a neuroscience competition either hosted in February, March, or April. It depends on the state or the country you're living in. But no matter where you're residing, there should be a Brain Bee event in every state and every country. So I would even recommend right now just doing a Google search like Brain Bee near me, put, Brain Bee plus the state you're in, Brain Bee plus the country you're in, and there should be information that pops up about a competition coming up within the next few months. And so what it is it's a neuroscience academia competition for high school students. So this is a picture of me when I participated back in 2020. I was a senior in high school. And what you do is you study some informational booklets and they all have information and it's kind of like a mini textbook really. It covers the foundations of neuroscience, so you really study that. You practice diagnosing patients. You learn a little bit about neuroanatomy, and after you've kind of spent those couple of months preparing, I actually think when I participated in 2020, I started preparing around Christmas, which is the season that we're in right now. So once you prepare, then you go to the competition and then you participate. So these are some pictures from when I organized the Brain Bee event at McMaster. So I was an undergraduate volunteer coordinator. And so we had a bunch of different students come in from all around Hamilton and they participated in this competition. And I worked with some really lovely people at McMaster as well that helped organize and coordinate the event. So I'm very grateful to them. But if this is something that you're interested in doing, I would highly recommend checking it out, especially since now is the perfect time. I tell everyone over the summer as well to participate, but now is the perfect time to get involved because it's actually approaching within the next couple of months. So this is how you participate and kind of how you prep. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. And then if you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer them. You can compete at different levels. If you live in the US, they have one in every state. If you live in Canada, there's one kind of in every major city. If you live internationally, there should be at least one in every country. If you need help finding it, you can also let me know. But that is the end of my workshop, and I'm right on time. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand or you can put questions in the chat as well about shadowing, research opportunities, really anything. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. But yeah, I will take some time for questions now. I hope that was helpful. I know there was a lot of information there, but we think it's important to kind of share all of that with you. And yeah, I will go ahead and see if there's any questions now. Ahmad, do you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to add, this time of year is absolutely great to reach out to professors or apply to, for example, summer research programs. A lot of applications are going to close in the next month or the next few months. I listed in the chat some research programs where I'm in Texas. There's the Clark Scholars Program and the UT Southwestern's program, the UT Southwestern's summer program, and these are specific for high schoolers wanting to gain research. So look in your area. They're typically universities that provide high school summer research opportunities for anyone that wanted to participate. Just thought I wanted to add that on there.
No,
Out there.
thank you so much. That's awesome. And then Princess, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I know I'm currently like in the brand B too, but as I was like going through competitions, there were a lot of international ones. Like, I don't know if you've heard it, MIT. How would you suggest like for international students they participate in these competitions for like the funding, for traveling and all of that?
Yeah, so I don't have much experience with needing to get funding just because my brain bee ended up being like a 30-minute drive from my school. But I can offer advice in terms of prep. What specifically are you looking for, like in
Like
advice?
like neuroscience, or I was also looking at like something with physical volunteering, but right now all of it's closed and the only one open is like in Texas right now.
hmm I would also recommend for those of you interested looking up an organization called Simply Neuroscience. So I worked for them for a couple of years. It is an entirely virtual, not-for-profit, and they do a lot of really great neuroscience outreach, and you can volunteer with literally zero experience, all online, so you don't ever have to have a physical presence anywhere. I'll put the name of it in the chat as well. But I'd recommend looking up Simply Neuroscience. The people that run it are really fantastic as well. So I'd highly recommend it. I had a great couple of years working there. But volunteering there is is a great opportunity. So I definitely recommend looking into that and looking for any like virtual internships or virtual opportunities as well. Okay, Hafsa.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks for the workshop. Really informative. Enjoyed it. Now, my question, since we are talking about careers, I really want to switch my career from math to nursing. So, I'm a senior high school student right now, and I want to pursue nursing. So, I really want to know about extracurriculars or which courses that are internationally accepted. So, what would you recommend I do?
So you're a senior in high school and you're looking for extracurriculars because you want to pursue some sort of career in science and healthcare and you're looking for some advice?
Yeah, right.
Okay, perfect. So I would recommend first looking into all the opportunities that I posted on the slide. So sometimes you can even just email physicians and see if they're open to taking you on for shadowing. You don't have to wait for an official volunteer program or an official shadowing program. I'd recommend just reaching out to people personally. If there are any teachers at your school or professors at local universities, I'd recommend emailing them as well to see. Sometimes you can just offer your services, whatever they might need. So when I was in my third year of university and I really needed some wet lab experience, I offered to help like take care of some of the crayfish that were being used for dissections in a neuroscience lab. And so, yeah, just by offering to literally do anything, I was able to get that opportunity. And that professor ended up being able to write me a letter of recommendation for graduate school, which was very helpful. And she's a really wonderful professor. So I would say just volunteer services in any capacity. So the mistake I see some students make sometimes is when they have no experience and then they write a cold email and they say, I would be a fantastic addition to your team. I would recommend not saying that. I would instead say, I have a lot of passion and interest in learning, and I think I would be able to learn well in your environment, in your atmosphere, in your lab. So, kind of phrasing it more as I don't have a lot of skill, but I have a lot of drive. I have a lot of interest. If you're willing to train me, I think we can make this work. So, saying that instead of I'm going to be like the best person to ever work on your team, I'm going to be a fantastic addition because if you're a first year student and you don't have any experience, that's probably not super true, but kind of phrasing it as more of that learning experience. So I'd recommend sending out those emails and then talking to friends. And then also being willing to look outside of your area. So I've done a lot of volunteering and gotten a lot of like work and research experience outside of where I lived, and that was because I was open to doing a lot of virtual work. So I just recommend looking into virtual internships, virtual opportunities. This camp is virtual, so I'd recommend doing that as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you
Joy?
so much.
Yeah, no worries.
Hi, my question was actually similar to the previous question. It was just like about like what type of recommendations do you guys have for like careers or clubs that like you could take while in college or even like in high school? Like I know you guys were mentioning like a lot of research opportunities, but like I just wanted like more information on that, like virtual or in person.
Mhm.
Like yeah.
Yeah, so have you ever reached out to any like professors at any universities, or are there any universities close to you?
Yeah, there is. I'm actually thinking about like starting to code email some professors as you guys were mentioning.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
my
like
first
great.
time,
Yeah.
so I just wanted some advice on that.
Yes, and actually, let me see if I can pull up right now. So in the summer, I ran an optional workshop where I actually showed people my cold email template that helped get me into several research positions. I had two third-year research projects, a fourth-year thesis, and then my master's project. So I've had a lot of experience reaching out to people, and that means a lot of experience getting things wrong too. So it's a fine-tuned process, but let me see if I can actually find that for you right now. And so that way, that might make the process a little bit less intimidating. And then maybe with that template, you might modify it and send it out to the professors in your area. But I think that's a really great start.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Okay, so I'll take a question from Princess while I look for this, and then I'm going to hop over to the chat and answer a couple of questions as well.
Wait, hold on, never mind.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so I will start looking at some questions in the chat. I will take maybe three only because um I want to make sure we have enough time for everything, but I'm also happy to answer questions afterwards as well. For pre-med certifications, do you know of any pathways for aid towards training? I unfortunately do not. Rourke, who's our operations director, served as an EMT volunteer for, I believe, at least several months. So what you could do is maybe reach out to him, or we can ask him to share a bit of his journey and how he applied for that position and got it. You could also consider being a medical scribe. So there are a bunch of free courses online to be a medical scribe, and then for specific physicians that need scribe services, so someone to kind of sit there and dictate all of the notes that happen during like a patient consultation, you could be there and do that. So I actually got a medical scribe certificate a couple of years ago, and so I'd recommend considering medical scribing as well, because that way you could actually provide an actual service to the physicians. So, write that down if that seems interesting. There are lots of free courses for medical scribing, so I would definitely recommend that. So, tips and tricks to make cold emails. First, make sure you read a scientific publication of theirs. Don't just say, I like your research, and do not just say, I liked your paper. Anyone can like the research and anyone can like the paper. What you need to do is go a little bit above and beyond because research is so competitive. I would recommend reading a specific paper and then asking them a question. So, for example, you could say, I read your paper entitled this, and pick a paper that is very recent, so published within the last year, because then it's fresh in their minds. And then you could ask them a question. I was wondering if you changed this, would that affect the outcome? Or do you think an interesting follow-up study could be this? Include that in your cold email. Show them that you are capable of a higher level of critical thinking and that you have put some thought into your application to them, and then really show them that you're interested in learning. Do not send them anything over a two-page resume or CV. They do not have time to read all of that. Make it 2 pages, make it short, sweet, concise, and tailored for the position you're applying to. So put your education, courses that might be relevant. Professors typically like it when you have some science courses and stats courses. And unfortunately, these days, it's like to get research experience, you already have to have research experience. And it's like, well, I mean, how do I get the research experience in order to get the research experience? But, try to to write your CV in a way that, makes the best out of the situation. If you've done a research class, even a small research project, I would include that there as well. Anything counts, anything would be helpful. But I would recommend that for your cold email, because sometimes people will just write that, hey, I like your research, and they don't really follow up. And I think that's a missed opportunity. So, was there a specific pathway program that you took to study in Canada? I just did the neuroscience major at my university, and that was actually a really small program. We ended up only having like 19 students in it. So, yeah, I don't have any recommendations like the Brain Bee for someone that's already graduated and is working towards medical school, but I will say that in my undergrad, I participated in a case study competition. We're doing a case study competition here as well. So I did an in-person case study competition with two other people. It was on brain cancer, and we ended up placing first, but I'd recommend looking for like in-person competitions, pitch competitions, case study competitions, research competitions. And I recommend doing things like that. I'd recommend doing our case study competition because if you earn an award, you could use that towards your applications. So just looking for any competitions and really being open to anything that's close to you. Any specific advice for prepping for the Brain Bee? So I actually did the Brain Bee event twice. I did it in 2019 and I didn't place, and then I did it in 2020 and I placed third. So the difference was my study methods. I just, anytime I had a free moment, I would open up the Brain Facts book. And I think it got to a point where if you told me a page number, I could have recited all the information to you on that page. That might be a little bit excessive. I don't know if you have to go that far, but I'd recommend just studying as much as possible. And my tried and true tested study method is explaining it. So in high school, I actually used to study by like taking my textbooks out into the kitchen while my mom was cooking dinner, and I would try to explain stuff to her. And so if I couldn't explain something to her, it meant I didn't know it. So I would go back and really try to understand it to a point where I could teach it to someone else. If you can teach something to something else, you understand it. I would apply that to the Brain Bee as well. And then I'd also look up any like there are Quizlets for the Brain Bee. There are diagnosis Quizlets as well for diagnosing a patient with some sort of brain condition. So I'd look those up as well. What AP science classes do I recommend in high school to prepare for undergrad? Just the typical ones, calc, bio, chem, and physics. Psych as well, because that's a bit of an easier one. But yeah, cold emailing is actually for everyone. I would recommend you can cold email even in middle school. You can cold email in middle school, high school, wherever you are in life. That is an opportunity that is absolutely open to you at any stage of your life. So you can cold email anyone in any stage of your journey. Because high schoolers get research experience too. High schoolers get shadowing opportunities and volunteer hours. And maybe your high school peers don't think about doing cold emailing, and that will set you apart if you actually think about doing it and have the drive. I know sometimes we think that like, oh, this isn't meant for me, like I'm too young, or I don't have enough experience to do this, but I would recommend not letting that hold you back. I actually started the Future M.D.s in STEM summer program in 2020. I was 16 years old and I didn't even have my high school diploma yet. I was 2 weeks away from graduating. And so I try to encourage people in like if you have an idea for something, please try it. You never know what would happen. I never thought that I'd create a program that would still be very successful 6 years later. So I'm 22 now. It's been 6 years since I started MedStem Powered. And I really think that you are capable of anything that you put your mind to. And I'm really impressed by the drive that I see in high school and undergraduate students. And so I'd recommend, pursue your passions, give it a try. You never know what will happen. You're never too young. You're really never too young, and you're never too inexperienced. I didn't have any experience running any type of program before I started this, and look at where I am now. So I think you're capable of anything. So yes, that was my short motivational speech. But yeah. So I will continue to look for my cold email template, and I will answer one more question. So what type of careers clubs would you guys recommend while in college or med school to boost your knowledge in medicine? I think a lot of universities have pre-med clubs. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. I would just recommend getting out there and getting experience, doing research in the field that you're interested in. There's patient research, there's all different types of research. Just trying to get that experience as early on as possible and prioritizing that over classes. Not that classes are not important, but the experience will put you ahead of other people. But yeah, I think we've talked about different types of clubs you can join, starting your own club as well. But yeah. Okay, cool. As a high school senior, when applying to medical schools, what are the first steps we can do to prepare our applications? So if you're a high school senior, you still have to go through all of undergrad, but it's great that you're thinking about this right now. I would say the first step is when you're in your first year of undergrad, try to get clinical research and shadowing opportunities early. That way you can stick with it throughout undergrad and have really strong letters of recommendation. So if you can get a physician or a scientist to write you a letter of recommendation, that looks really good. And then, yeah, just really starting early. So I just recommend starting early. Okay, I'll take a couple questions from people that have their hands raised, but otherwise we're going to take a 10-minute break until 1:35, and then we'll split up into our breakout rooms and do our escape room that was organized by Camilla, one of our fantastic executive interns. So if you don't have any questions, we're taking a break until 1:35. But if you do, I will stick around and answer them. So feel free to take a little break, stretch your legs, but I will answer some questions until then. Ayana?
Hi, Davina. I just wanted to say thank you so much for your workshop session. I found it to be very insightful and very helpful. So thank you. I wanted to ask it was just on my mind, the cold emailing template that you have for research. I know that for physician shadowing or just shadowing period, they also recommend that you cold email physicians, nurses, physician assistants as well. Would you also happen to have a template for that, or is your template for cold emailing for research positions, can it also be universally applied to um, code emailing for physicians and shadowing as well?
Yeah, so you can definitely modify that template and use it for you can use it for shadowing as well. Just modify it a little bit. So instead of saying, if they don't have any published papers, talk about their work and why you find that specific field of work interesting. But yeah, I actually just found it, and this is what I shared over the summer as well. So just put it in the chat. This is my cold email template. And then our one of our directors of education, Jonathan, he actually on the second page of this document has a sample cold email where he, created that to send out to someone. So I'd recommend really taking a look at it. It's really great to have a template from people. I found that when I was applying to research positions, no one really told me what was going on or what was expected. I kind of had to figure it out on my own. And so that's why I really want to, do workshops like this and share my template and not gatekeep anything, because I'm a firm believer in what was difficult for me should be easier for you. So I hope that it's helpful in some way.
Thank you so much. And we really appreciate all your efforts. You're definitely right. They kind of leave you out on your own to figure these things out. So it's amazing that you're providing these opportunities, these workshops, these templates for students like us to make it easier. So thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for your kind words. Okay, Nagwa? Okay, I think they lowered their hand. So, Marsha, do you have a question?
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. So I'd like to ask something. I think I don't think everyone has this problem, but it's a problem on my own. I'm very sure that several other countries and several other students are having this issue. So it's regarding shadowing itself. So apparently, shadowing isn't really a common practice in my country. So I tried reaching out. I tried sending cold emails to several doctors in EDC, and they said that we don't really do that here. So instead, I reached out to doctors abroad, in which we know that usually they don't accept it. They don't really accept as many international students as they do with students around their area. So do you have like any advice to it, or perhaps like what I can do about it? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of different tips. First, here we offer virtual shadowing for the program, so hopefully that's helpful in some way. Second, volume. So I don't know how many people you've reached out to, but sometimes it takes hundreds and hundreds of emails to get one positive response, and that's the only response you need. And then, yes, Med School Coach on Instagram has free virtual shadowing opportunities. We actually partnered with them a couple of years ago for one of our summer programs. They were really awesome. So I'd recommend looking them up on Instagram as well. Thank you for putting that in the chat. But that, and then when you're reaching out to these doctors internationally, make sure you suggest that obviously you're open to virtual shadowing. But yeah, sometimes it's volume and it does definitely suck and is a little bit, discouraging if that's not really the normal practice in your country when it seems like everyone else is getting these shadowing opportunities and it's not possible. So I definitely sympathize with that. But I think there are some good recommendations here. I'd recommend reaching out to as many people as possible. And then of course we give you shadowing hours as well. So hopefully it's helpful.
Thank you so much for the advice.
No worries. Sanaya?
Hello. Yeah. So you've said that you've done neuroscience, right?
Mhm.
And I just wanted to ask you, like, was neuroscience different from what you thought it would be, like, once you started, like, getting into the details?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I originally wanted to do neuroscience because I wanted to be a neurologist. So I entered it with a very patient-focused mindset. And what I found was I really liked the science a lot better. I thought the science of the brain was really cool. And some of my favorite classes in undergrad were the neurobiology of disease and then neurodegenerative disease classes. So I really liked learning about like biochemical and metabolic pathways in the brain. And so I actually found that I enjoyed that a lot more than shadowing experiences, unfortunately. And that I think that was one thing that surprised me. Definitely neuroscience classes are not for the weak. The program is very challenging. There's a very big emphasis on being very interdisciplinary, having a focus on in biology, chemistry, physics, math involving like calculus, linear algebra. So I've had to take a lot of rough classes, both organic chemistries as well. But I would say it surprised me in just, I feel like the more I learned, the less I knew. I always was like, okay, the brain's really cool and it's, up there doing its thing. But the more you learn, the more you realize how intricate the brain actually is. And I believe that we could spend hundreds and millions of years doing research in neuroscience and we'd never fully understand everything that's going on up there. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so exciting.
I had another question. Would you say that, like, while you were studying neuroscience, a lot of chemistry and physics was involved? Like, a
Yeah,
lot of it?
yes, unfortunately. I love chemistry and physics for other people. I'm not the biggest fan of them personally. You have to take, if you're doing an undergraduate degree in neuroscience, it depends from university to university. But I had to do first year chemistry. I had to do 2 semesters of organic chemistry, physics, E&M, and a couple of other classes as well. It's not, you can really build a schedule tailored to the classes that you want to take, but some chemistry and physics is unavoidable, unfortunately. Unless you really
Uh,
like that stuff, then yeah.
So I haven't taken physics or chemistry for 11th and 12th. So would you suggest that I take like AP Chem and Physics to like make up for it when I'm applying for colleges?
Absolutely. It will really help you out in your first year of university. I definitely wish I didn't take AP Chem in high school, and I wish that I had. I wish that I had taken AP Chem and AP Physics in high school because I think that would have better prepared me and made that transition into university a little bit
Hmm.
less overwhelming. So I'd say whatever experience you can do now, do it now. It will help you in the future.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay. I don't know if there's any other specific questions, but if there's something that I didn't get to, I will answer it later. Oh, you mentioned choosing to pursue graduate studies after initially considering medicine. When you switched your focus to prepare and apply for a PhD program, did you feel behind in your research experience? How did you adjust your path? I didn't feel super behind in my research experience just because I always knew that I'd want to get some research experience anyway. So I was very active. I'd been looking for a research opportunity since my second year of undergrad. And the way that I ended up getting a position was in one of my classes, every week we would have a professor come in and tell us about their research. And this was online. So I made sure that my camera was on. Every week I did research on their work and I asked them a question face to face. and I emailed them afterwards. They were I feel like maybe I bothered people a little bit, but that's fine. I didn't do too much. But I made sure that they saw me and I emailed them right afterwards. I sent them a cold email that was, a little bit more lukewarm since they'd actually seen my face. And that's how I got a third year research project and a fourth year neuroscience thesis project. I was very much on top of my game, emailing as many professors as I could, establishing a personal connection, going to those networking events. And because I did all of that, by the time I had reached out to these professors, they already knew me. They had seen me like the day before. And so they were a little bit more willing to take me on because I wasn't a complete stranger and I had built those skills in writing a really good cold email. So I didn't feel super behind, but I did have to adjust a couple of things because I was looking for like clinical shadowing opportunities. So I stopped looking for those. I was trying to join like an emergency first response team, so I stopped trying to do that. So I kind of adjusted my path to shift away from like a clinical focus and more into a basic science focus. So yeah, I didn't feel super behind, but I was able to adjust a little bit. Okay. So I think that's all the time we have for questions today. But I think what we're going to do now, hopefully, if you didn't have questions, you took a little break. But one of our interns, Camilla, has created a little escape room that's biochemistry themed. And what we're going to have you all do is we're actually going to split you all up into breakout rooms, and you'll do the breakout room, you'll do the escape room in your different little groups. And you can elect one person to share their screen and kind of go through the breakout rooms. You can collaborate on the answers, and then when you're done, you can head back here and we will wrap up the session. It should only take about 20 minutes or so, but Camilla, if you're here and you want to kind of describe the escape room you've created, feel free. She did a great job with it, and it's super interactive and super fun.
Hi, yes. Well, as Avina said, this is a little bit of a biochemistry theme, but we are focusing on metabolic pathways. So it's a medium level just for like to have like a bit of an idea what those metabolic pathways look like and to kind of reason like the different enzymes and the different factors that have like a certain effect on the pathway. So we really just want you all to have fun and to really like collaborate with your partners on the breakout rooms so that you can solve these questions. It's very easy if you guys collaborate, so I hope you guys enjoy it.
Perfect. And would you mind sending a link out in the chat so that everyone has it? And would you mind also sending it out in the announcements channel on Slack as well, just in case anyone, misplaces it in the chat? I will also see if I can find the link. But yeah, you can have one person do it and share their screen. That way, not everyone has to make like a free account or anything. But I will send the link out now. I just found it. Perfect. And then I'll put it on the announcements channel here. Okay, so I'm going to create some breakout rooms now. So there's going to be probably around 20 people per breakout room. And so what we're hoping is, you can have your cameras on, chat with people about it, elect one person, they'll share their screen so you can work through all the questions together. When you are done, head back into this main meeting and then we will wrap up the session. Okay, so I have created breakout rooms with about 20 people. They are all open now, so please join those rooms, work on this activity together, chat with people, and if you have any questions or concerns, we'll be here in the main meeting and we can answer them for you. Just make a note of what room you're in case you, get lost. But happy escaping. I still see some people in the main meeting, so if you're having issues being assigned a breakout room, please talk to us and we will help you get situated. But we will head back in about 20 minutes. Camilla, if people have questions, can they message you on like Slack or something? Let me
Yeah.
put that message out now. Oh, I needed to change the permission so that people could share their screen. I am changing that now. That is my bad. Okay, it says all people can share.
Hey Delphina, sorry to bother, but we encountered technical issue because none of us can share screens in the breakout room.
Okay, I think I just changed that now.
Okay. Okay.
It's Marsha, right?
Yeah, it's Marcia.
Okay, I'm also gonna make you talk. Try it again now. Go back to your room.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. This was a great idea, Camilla. Thank you so much for making it.
Thank you.
Hopefully it's going smoothly, but we'll get input after people join back.
Hi.
Hello. Do you have a question? No? Okay. Mel, are you getting any questions from anyone, or do people seem to be doing it? Okay.
I think they are okay. I haven't received any DMs.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I was in the room one, but I lost the link. Can you add me again?
Um, let me see. You were in room one?
Yes.
Okay, I just invited you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, like my phone died, and I got like it kicked me out. I don't know. Is there like another attendance sheet or?
Yeah, we'll be doing another one at 2. Did you want to rejoin the breakout room you were in?
Yeah, if that was possible.
Yeah, do you remember what number it was? Because unfortunately I wouldn't know.
I remember Noah being in there.
Okay. That is helpful actually. Let me see. Okay. You were in room 3 then.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. For the folks that are joining back, have you guys finished the escape room? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Awesome. How was it? Amazing. Okay. So I'm gonna give everyone a couple of minutes to join back still because I know some people are still finishing it, but just hang tight till then. Nifemi?
Yeah, I have a question for Camilla. Did you make the thingy by yourself, like with your amazing brain power? Like just by yourself?
Yeah. Well, I took like a little bit of inspiration from my biochemistry classes and what my teacher put on the questions, which was
Oh,
yeah, it was a terrible exam, but yeah, mostly from it and
mm,
the like the characters and like the backgrounds, I drew them.
period. I hope to be as smart as you one day.
Thank you.
For those of you joining back, I think there's one breakout room that's still doing the activity, so we're giving them 1 more minute, and then we will wrap up the session. I've shared the attendance form, the second one, in the chat, so feel free to fill it out now. And if you're done the escape room and you filled out the attendance form and you're not planning on participating in the case study competition, you're more than welcome to head out now. If you are planning on participating in the case study competition, I definitely recommend sticking around because we're going to be sharing our previous year prompts, our rubrics, and even a student example that did really, really well. So, yeah, if you are heading out now, then thank you so much for sticking around, and we will see you tomorrow. We hope you had a great time with our first session of our winter camp. If you are sticking around, make sure that you're still on Zoom because we'll be going over our case study competition rules. Okay, everyone's joining back now. So first, I just want to say a huge, huge thank you to Camilla for doing the fantastic interactive and the little escape room here. It was such a wonderful way to interact with the material, and we're always getting feedback that students really appreciate it when things are interactive. So we really hope you enjoyed that. Camilla did a fantastic job, and we hope you enjoyed kind of engaging with the material in a more collaborative and fun way. So we hope that it was enjoyable. We've gotten some really good feedback from it as well. So thank you once again to Camilla, who did an amazing, amazing job. So to wrap up our session for today, I have already sent out the session one attendance number two form. So I'm gonna put the form in the chat as well. Again, in case you missed it, please fill it out now. You'll have 10 minutes to fill it out. So this is all you need to certify your attendance for the second part of our session today. And then if you filled out both forms, you're all set for today's session. Again, if you do not plan on participating in our case study competition and you want to head out now as it's 2 o'clock, please feel free, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time. So please make sure you read through our schedule so that you can see who our guest speakers are, see what the workshops are. We will be having a medical debate tomorrow where you're going to be in breakout rooms. If you do not plan on participating, you can leave at that time. That's totally okay. And after today's session, we're going to share with you the topics that you will be debating and discussing tomorrow in your smaller groups, so you have some time to do some research before tomorrow's session. But again, if you are heading out now because you do not plan on participating in the case study competition, then thank you so much for joining us for our first session. Really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much to everyone that made the session possible, and we will see you back here tomorrow.